victims of this air crash. He's also conveyed his deep remorse with regards to how helpless they were in terms of not being able to do anything to rescue all those victims. Also has expressed his condolences for the tragic demise of Mr. Vijay Rupani, the former Gujarat CM. Joining me right now with more inputs is Patel Mehta. Patel, what are you learning in terms of the demise of the former Gujarat CM, Mr. Vijay Rupani? At what time was he declared dead?
He was declared dead just a short while ago, but Rupani's demise feels very personal. I have covered his journey both as a Rajya Sabha member of Parliament to the fact that he was declared the Chief Minister in 2016, to the fact that he was asked to step down in 2021 when Bhupendra Patel took over. Thereafter, he's held organizational responsibilities. Is currently the Punjab head as far as the BJP's organization is really concerned. He has been somebody who in fact stepped down from active politics, in the sense he would not fight active electoral politics in 2022 when he wrote that letter to C.R. Patel, essentially saying that he would not like to contest the election. And what a tragedy coming to the fore, Akanksha. He was on his way to London. That picture which is out is what fellow passenger clicked and sent to his daughter, because his wife, his daughter was already residing in London. She's married and has been residing in London. His son, who was in the US, was on his way to London because the entire family was to meet together and celebrate a vacation together as well. What a sad end to this life as well. Vijay Rupani had a long-standing career. He started his career as an ABVP, supporter. He's been somebody who, in fact, moved on to, in fact, be an RSS Pracharak. Has also been somebody who was associated with the Janta government, had associated with the BJP from its very inception. One of those leaders who has actually spent few months in jail during the 1976 emergency as well. Extremely close to the BJP top leadership. Hails from Rajkot, is a Gujarati of the Jain community, has held multiple responsibilities, both with the organization and also with multiple responsibilities, including being a mayor in the past as well. What a sad end to the 68-year-old life. And Vijay Rupani, in a way, was on a happy trip to London trying to meet his family for a vacation, and it ended in a very, very tragic manner. One's heart goes out to his entire family that has to actually deal with this tragedy now.
Right, absolutely agree with you. He was a figure who commanded and wielded much influence in the politics of not just the Bharatiya Janata Party, but particularly in Gujarat, because as you highlighted, he held office as the CM between 2016 and 2021. In fact, had held 2 consecutive terms. Many thanks to you, Patel, for bringing us those latest inputs. Let's also give our viewers a quick recap in terms of what exactly happened. From Ahmedabad to London Gatwick was the flight actually headed to as it crashed. The flight took off from runway number 23 at 1:38 p.m. local time. 230 passengers were on board, 12 crew members included. 169 out of these were Indians, 53 were British, 7 Portuguese and 1 Canadian national was on board. A mayday call was issued shortly after takeoff, which was of course not responded. The flight soon after crashed into a medical hostel building. So what happened mid-air also? Initial data from Flight Air India 171 shows that the aircraft reached a maximum barometric altitude of 625 feet. The airport altitude is about 200 feet. Minutes after making this mayday call, the Air India flight started to descend rapidly with a vertical speed of minus 475 feet per minute. And this is that moment of the crash, the plane that quickly descended into the residential area. Let's also take you through that entire footage. As it shows, this rapid descent is what has caught the attention of several aviation experts. As you can see, that the plane had not even reached its complete altitude, which is rather shocking for a commercial air flight. The blaze also soon after erupted, and it was a catastrophic blaze that took place. As you can see, this is in fact the entire debris and the crash site with the debris and the fuel catching fire, gutting several buildings. As you can see, the smoke continues to bellow out, and those are the gutted buildings in the background. Parts of the plane crashed into nearby residential areas, wrecking several buildings, as you can see. And it is the medical students from these buildings that are still struggling for life. Many of them are also being reported dead. But what has caught the attention of the viewers is the nose of the aircraft, which is stuck inside the building. Plane parts destroyed several buildings near the crash site. The parts of the fuselage and engines were cut into several buildings, as you can see. The teams soon after kicked into action. All these emergency teams were activated. They were working round the clock, even as we speak, to douse the flames at the crash site and the nearby buildings. This is one of the deadliest Boeing crashes. Remember, if we look at the cases across the globe, let me give you a quick recap of what happened in December of 2024. Jeju air crash happened in South Korea. It was a Boeing 737-800. What was the reason? It overshot the runway post-emergency landing. What was the death toll like? 179 people of the 181 which were on board were all killed. Let's now quickly rewind to 2019 March. An Ethiopian Airlines, again a Boeing 737 MAX 8. What was the reason? It crashed post-takeoff from Addis Ababa, led to a death toll of 157 passengers and crew members, all of them killed. In October of 2018, the Lion Air Flight 610 in Indonesia crashed. It was a Boeing 737 MAX 8. The reason that was given that time was that it crashed into the ocean soon after takeoff. All 189 on board were killed. If we look at Air India crashes at home, especially in August of 2020, Air India Express flight 1344 killed 184 passengers, 6 crew members, and the reason given was that it overshot the runway during the landing. The death toll was 21 fatalities, and the conclusion that was drawn, in fact, was that there was a non-adherence to the SOPs by the pilot. Now, in May of 2010, in Mangaluru, the Air India Express flight 812 killed 160 passengers and 6 crew members that were on board. The reason that was given was that it overshot the runway, fell into a gorge, and led to the death toll of 152 fatalities. The deduction was that the captain failed to discontinue the plane. And so the Ahmedabad air disaster is the deadliest crash in Indian aviation. It has, of course, prompted several unanswered questions. Let me bring those questions forward to you. The first most burgeoning question that begs our attention is, was there a technical issue detected a day before the flight that was perhaps missed out on? The other question that also is being raised is what prompted the pilot to issue the SOS within 5 minutes of the takeoff. Can foul play angle be even ruled out by the authorities? Will all Boeing 787 planes now be put under scanner following this deadly air crash in Ahmedabad today? Will the black box unlock the mystery behind the plane crash? These are all the host of questions that beg and people are still looking for answers for. Now, we are also getting in some breaking inputs right now. Sources from the Ahmedabad police have gone on to say that one survivor has been rescued out of that entire plane crash that happened. So far, only one survivor. Almost a miraculous incident that there's one survivor who has been rescued. The confirmation coming in from Ahmedabad police as we speak. This, remember, so far is a lone survivor who was sitting on seat 11A. Payal Mehta joins me with more inputs. Payal, share the details with us.
Well, what we're given to understand is that there is possibly one survivor. That is at least what the authorities are confirming. So that was actually at least some glint, of hope in this entire otherwise dismal affair that was only seen. That 11A is a survivor that the police has really come out and said, and that is actually no less than a miracle, given the fact that we're almost confirmed that most of the passengers are feared to be dead. In this, including the building against which it crashed, where doctors were eating lunch during the lunch hour as well. This is tragic beyond, beyond one's imagination, but at least one faint glint of hope. And that survivor actually must be a real survivor to survive this entire crash where everybody around him is feared to be dead. Akansha.
Also, Payal, what are you learning in terms of the condition of this survivor? How seriously or gravely is he injured, and are there any hopes of him? All right, we seem to have lost that connection with Payal, but what we can tell you is this is almost a miracle that we have a lone survivor from that plane crash. And remember, many of them or almost all of them have been declared dead, but the Ahmedabad police confirming that one person has miraculously survived, and perhaps this survivor could be of extreme importance to the entire investigation, which will now be looking into what exactly led to that deadly air crash. Payal Mehta is back with us. Payal, if you could share details with us with regards to what is the condition of this lone survivor.
Well, the condition has certainly been ascertained, and no doubt whatsoever. Kancha, that person must have really, got grievous injuries, to say the least, given the fact that everything around him is charged. One has to remember that the flight was full completely. It was full to its capacity, and also the fact that the flight was just taking off, which clearly meant that even fuel-wise, the flight would have been completely full to the brim, and therefore everything around them is really charged. The Ahmedabad police is still trying to ascertain his exact health condition. But, like I said, in a place where actually everything seems to be so glum, at least there's this faint hint of some sort of a hope coming up that life knows how to survive.
Absolutely. Also, now that we have a lone survivor, Payal, share with us how crucial and pivotal could be this survival, in fact, for the entire ongoing investigation. As we also heard what the Civil Aviation Minister, Mr. Ram Mohan Naidu, had to say, that they will get to the bottom of what exactly led to this crash.
Of course, it's going to be of great help to see when he or she is able to recover and be able to share what he or she went through, in the entire flight, depending completely on his health condition, what he's able to recall. But at least one thing is for sure, at least one family will have some smile on their face when everybody around them are completely heartbroken and just fallen, given the fact that every of their loved ones have, fallen prey to this ghastly attack, ghastly crash which has taken place as well. But like I said, it is going to be certainly a very important piece of evidence coming to the fore. He's an eyewitness who was on that flight. He will be able to, in fact, recall and tell the police officials what really happened. Because I'm sure before, the ATC was connected, the pilot must have also alerted the passengers within the aircraft as to what was really happening. It was all this happened within a matter of 60 seconds is what we've been able to fathom and we've been able to gather as well. So his testimony will be of great importance as far as that's concerned. But purely depends on what his health condition is and when and how much is he able to recall.
All right, so what we are also learning that the survivor's name is Vishwa Kumar, and the Ahmedabad police have in fact gone on to confirm that he has been rescued. He's a lone survivor from this crash. Of course, it is a miracle that he has survived. In fact, this is footage coming in of the survivor, Mr. Ramesh, as you can see, as he walks out, almost surviving for him, of course, has been a miracle. That is something what we can tell you for sure. And as Payal was also highlighting, he's going to be very pivotal. His testimony is going to be very pivotal with regards to the ongoing investigation. As Ram Mohan Naidu, the Civil Aviation Minister, has already confirmed that they will get to the bottom of this entire probe to find out what exactly led to this crash. It's a miracle that this lone survivor is in fact even able to walk out of that crash site at a time when most of the survivors, all of the survivors have been declared dead. But Ahmedabad police over there confirming that this lone survivor who was on seat number 11A survived. This is perhaps going to go down in the annals of history as this lone survivor walks out of the Ahmedabad airport. He is, remember, the only lone survivor in a flight that was carrying over 230 passengers. His name is Vishwas Kumar Ramesh, who survived the plane crash. He was allotted seat number 11A. And the Ahmedabad police have finally rescued this one survivor. Remember, his testimony is going to be pivotal, extremely significant to the ongoing investigation, because nobody's been able to ascertain, with aviation experts still trying to ascertain the exact reason The quality control behind Boeing is also now coming into the picture, as reports are indicating that there was an FAA audit last year, which was a 2-week audit into the quality checks of Boeing. But could it be a technical glitch, or could it be a bird hit, or multiple birds hitting, or weather also could be playing a significant role? Right now it is fairly nascent at this stage to comment into exactly what was that went behind, but perhaps it is Mr. Ramesh's testimony that will be extremely significant. Vishwas Kumar Ramesh, he's a British national, is what we are being told, and he was on the Gatwick bound flight that took off from Ahmedabad and crashed soon after takeoff. Roughly 20 minutes after takeoff is when it crashed, and it crashed into the residential building of the medical college, into the medical hostel, where several students are still grappling for life. It is a miracle, to say the least, that we have a lone survivor, Mr. Ramesh, allotted seat number 11A. He is a British national, as we are being told. He was on a visit to Gujarat and was heading back to London. Patel joins me with more inputs on this miraculous survival that's taken place. Patel, share what else are you learning from your sources?
Like I said, that this is a very, very tragic episode which has come to the fore as well. Nobody would have been prepared for an episode like this. A flight of happiness for many who are either looking to go back home or embark on a vacation or a work trip has turned into an extreme tragedy. The testimony of the lone survivor as of now is going to be of extreme importance. That is something at least what the authorities are hoping for, because his testimony in terms of what really led to the circumstances that actually happened is going to be of great importance. We'll have to just wait and see. But like I said, all hands on deck approach being applied by the government of India over here. In terms of what we've seen so far, multiple leaders, multiple ministers being flown down to Gujarat. C.R. Patel, the Union Minister of Jal Shakti, and also, the state president of BJP has just reached Gujarat. He, in fact, gave us the unfortunate confirmation of Vijay Rupani's unfortunate demise over here. Civil Aviation Minister Rammohan Naidu can be seen taking rounds of the accident site, trying to ascertain what's really happening. Muralidhar Mohal, the MOS for Civil Aviation, will also be landing shortly at around 7 o'clock, 7:30, I beg your pardon. He's going to be accompanied by officials from Ministry of Civil Aviation Secretary, and also the DGC officials, who are going to be examining the accident site and understanding how to go about the investigation. Because remember, the government of India has promised not just to the Indians and not to the victims of those people who actually fell apart to this deadly accident, but also to the foreign nationals that a thorough investigation will be done. And also the fact that Union Home Minister Mr. Amit Shah is a local son of the soil. He's also expected to land in Ahmedabad sometime from now. As it's just too early, I can't to predict as to what really led to the situation, whether there was a technical failure, or whether there was a human error, or whether there was any attempt to sabotage, because there were a lot of foreign nationals on this. Nothing is being ruled out from the agency so far, and should there be any sabotaging angle which emerges over here, it will be important to see if the government hands over the probe to NIA or any other investigating agency. It's just too early in the day to talk about it. We'll have to just wait for some more time.
Absolutely. In fact, stay with me, Patel, as we are also getting in more information through newspaper reports which are going on to indicate that Mr. Vishwas Kumar Ramesh, who's 40-year-old and the only lone survivor of this deadly crash, has, as we can see, borne impact injuries on his chest, eyes and feet. He has received these impact injuries, but is miraculously able to walk out of that entire crash site. That is, in fact, indeed a miracle in itself. And he's also gone on to share his experience. Most importantly, he's gone on to talk about how there was a loud noise just 30 seconds after takeoff, and that is what in fact led to a crash within minutes, and the plane of course burst into flames. So this is what Vishwas has had to share, that it was only after 30 seconds of takeoff there was a loud noise, and then soon after the plane crashed. It all happened very quickly. So if one was to go by what Vishwas has had to say, this is also contradicting the other versions that have come into limelight, which are going on to indicate that it was roughly after 20 minutes of takeoff that the plane actually crashed. But Vishwas has gone on to share that only after 30 seconds there was a loud noise, and soon after the plane crashed. It all happened very quickly. But this indeed is a miracle to see. Vishwas Kumar Ramesh, who is a 40-year-old British national, was visiting Gujarat, has miraculously escaped this or rather survived this deadly or catastrophic air crash. This, as relatives of all those who were aboard the Air India flight are currently desperately looking for their loved ones at the civil hospital in Ahmedabad as we speak. All the rest have been declared dead except from Vishwas Kumar Ramesh, who is a 40-year-old, the lone survivor, as he survived this deadly crash. But if you can see that image which is currently being flashed on your screens, he's of course borne injuries on his face. These are impact injuries that he's not just borne on his face but also on his chest. But what stands out is that he's able to walk out of the crash, and these impact injuries, given the catastrophic explosion that happened after the plane crashed, it's a miracle to see this lone survivor, 40-year-old Vishwas Kumar Ramesh, who survived this entire crash. But as we've been highlighting, his testimony is going to be extremely pivotal to the ongoing investigation, which has now led to a host of unanswered questions. What are those unanswered questions? Well, many are wondering if it was the Boeing and the quality check that led to it. Can foul play angle be ruled out by authorities? Will all Boeing 787 planes now be put under the scanner following this deadly catastrophic crash? Was there a technical issue detected even before the flight could take off? CNN News 18 has been getting you reactions, and we've been speaking to passengers who boarded this flight earlier in the day, and they've gone on to talk about how there were technical slags because the AC in the aircraft was not working, the in-flight entertainment was not working, which is rather unusual for Air India flights. And those are the testimonies that we are learning from passengers who had boarded this flight earlier during the day. But as of now, there are a host of unanswered questions, and to pinpoint any particular factor would be fairly nascent or premature. But all those unanswered questions do call for an investigation. Will the authorities be able to find the black box? How soon will they be able to, because perhaps the black box will be able to unlock the mystery behind this entire plane crash. But what's standing out right now as we track all the latest updates for you in this unimaginable story that has emerged is that Ramesh Kumar actually managed to dodge death, had a narrow escape. In fact, that explosion that you can see is catastrophic to say the least, and he managed to actually come out absolutely unscathed. It's miraculous that he's managed to walk out of the crash site. As you can see, the least that he's borne is in fact those impact injuries on his face, on his chest. And he's a 40-year-old British national who was in fact visiting the state of Gujarat. He was on this Gatwick bound flight. He was allotted seat 11A. And according to Mr. Ramesh, there was a loud explosion, and that happened soon, 30 seconds after takeoff, and it all happened so quickly, and that is exactly what led the aircraft to nosedive and led to the crash eventually. In fact, aviation experts have also been commenting on the rapid descent of this entire crash and the entire video. But let's quickly go across to Anvit, who's been tracking the latest for us. Anvit, if you could share with us the story of this lone survivor, what is it that you're learning? If you could give us some confirmation regarding the comments that he's shared with other newspaper reports that are indicating that he said that only after 30 seconds did the aircraft crash, and there was a loud explosion before it led to that crash. Anvit, can you hear me? All right, we'll try and reconnect with Anvit, but this is the big story of the hour that has emerged out of this entire air crash. The only silver lining to this deadly catastrophic air crash as Ramesh Kumar is the lone survivor. He is a 40-year-old British national visiting the state of Gujarat. This as several families now look for their loved ones. Vishwas Ramesh, of course, survives this deadly air crash. Anvit is back with us. Anvit, what are you learning about this lone survivor of this catastrophic air crash?
One passenger so far has been identified who is the survivor, and so far we are calling him the lone survivor because no other survivor has been reportedly been safe in this flight. And this man has been identified as Vishwas Kumar Ramesh. He had been living in UK for more than 20 years, and he had come to India with his brother, and he was traveling back. They had visited Diu, and he's a 40-year-old man. He had when he was found on the spot, he was put in an ambulance and sent to medical facilities. But as he recalled the incident for the media, he mentioned that when he when the plane crashed, he was on the seat 11A, and he has said that he realized only after when the plane crashed, he found himself amidst the debris that was on fire, and he said that he has recalled that there were bodies all around and there were human remains all around. And he said that he was scared seeing those visuals and he was terrified. That was the moment when he was put into an ambulance and was sent to medical facility. Now, he has been marked safe. He has injuries. He certainly has injuries all over his body. There are burn marks as well, and there are injuries also. But doctors are saying that he's safe. He has been marked safe. He's out of danger right now, and he's under medical supervision. But so far, he's the only passenger actually who has been found to have survived this crash. Other than that, even though the rescue operations are still underway, it is being the debris also being looked if there would be any more people who can be sent to medical facility, or the dead who can be shifted to the boat. But so far, this person is the only survivor that we have spotted and that the agencies have spotted, and he has been marked. Vishwas Kumar Ramesh is his name. He's a 40-year-old resident who is a British national by nationality, and he had come here with his brother. He was traveling back to London when this incident took place.
Many thanks to you, Anvit, for bringing us those latest inputs. In fact, in the studio, we are also joined in by Captain Kishore Chinta, who is the chief pilot of the Sirius India Airlines Private Limited. Many thanks to you, sir, for joining in. Captain Chinta, what do you make of this miraculous survival? Also, how crucial and pivotal could this testimony be now of Mr. Ramesh to the entire investigation?
Good evening. Thank you for having me on CNN News 18. It is indeed practically grabbing life out of the jaws of death for the survivor. It is indeed miraculous that he survived the crash, considering that the aircraft would have probably had 50 to 60 tons of fuel when it impacted the ground, and that kind of fuel would probably just wipe out everything in the vicinity after the crash. So the testimony is pretty understandable. It is well known from the data available from the Flight Radar 24 ADSB data, which is not very accurate, but gives us a sense of the timing of how much time the aircraft was up in the air. It was definitely not a immediate loss of power. The fact that it happened beyond a speed of V1, beyond which the pilots were compelled to continue with the takeoff, and that it gained an altitude of close to 625 feet as on flight radar. So it had enough power to at least gain that much amount of height before it appears to be total loss of power, and the aircraft slowly started coming down in a controlled manner. The pilots wouldn't have had anything.
That's exactly the point I want to come in on, Captain, because remember, as you quoted, that Flight Radar has attributed the altitude of just 625 feet after takeoff, which is a height far below standard for a commercial aircraft several minutes into it. I think for the benefit of all our viewers, it is important to break down why this low altitude could have had a role to play. All right, and before we take that answer from you, in fact, fresh visuals coming in on CNN News 18 after the Civil Aviation Minister Ram Mohan Naidu. What we can tell you is that the Home Minister Amit Shah has arrived. Remember, this is also his home state. He's here to inspect the entire site. And as you can see, the debris is still scattered, all of it completely charred. It's a very dark day for the entire nation because the country has also lost the former Chief Minister of Gujarat, Mr. Vijay Rupani, and those visuals coming in as the Union Home Minister, Shri Amit Shah, inspects the crash site. Remember, this is where the Air India aircraft crashed minutes after takeoff, and it is the hostel or the residential building of a medical college. Many of those medical students are still struggling for life. The Home Minister also accompanied by the Gujarat Chief Minister. In fact, he's standing right next to the building where it is the nose of the aircraft that's still stuck, and the Union Home Minister actually inspecting. So, Captain Chinta, please go ahead and tell us why the low altitude could have had a role to play.
Well, the mere fact that it reached that altitude is testimony that those engines are powerful enough, even at partial power, to propel the aircraft to that altitude at least. Because if there was total loss of power, it wouldn't have even reached that altitude after takeoff. So the reasons can be multitude. It could be probably a burdette leading to portions of the engine shearing off and entering the rest of the engine clear, causing complete shutdown of the engines. So right now, until the, like you mentioned, until the CVR, the cockpit voice recorder and the flight data recorder are found and downloaded by the Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau, we will not come to know the actual picture on when actually the engine started winding down. So the height definitely is critical. Probably if they had a couple of 100 feet more, they would have crossed that one sole building and maybe impacted the ground in more clearer area, leading to chances of more survivors compared to what we have right now.
All right, let me also introduce the other guests joining us. I'm joined in by Captain Ehsan Khalid, who's a veteran pilot and currently flying as captain of Gulfstream 650 aircraft. Also joined in by Commodore BS Catch, who's the ex-DG and an aviation safety expert, Mr. Anand Ranganathan, renowned author. Thank you for joining in. Anand, if I could come to you, what is your assessment of the lone survivor, first of all, who's in fact walked out completely unscathed? It's rather shocking to see him walking out at a time when the loved ones are looking for their family members who could have been on that flight.
Good evening, Akanksha. On this terrible hour, my sincere condolences to the families of the bereaved. It's such a tragedy. I think we all feel exactly how each one of those families of 242 on the plane and so many other who were doctors and medical students were in the building where the plane crashed into. My sincere condolences. It's an absolutely ghastly event that has taken place. 3 points I'd like to make. Number one, of course, it is too early to even discuss about the possibilities of what caused the fatal crash. There are many theories floating around, but at the moment, I'm not going to pick one of those, or at least go with some of those theories, because all of them are at present mere conjectures. This Dreamliner, which is a particular type of aircraft, this is the first fatal crash in its history, and it's been there commissioned for the last 15 years. Having said that, there have been whistleblowers who've talked about the deficiencies that have gone on in the construction, in the making of the Dreamliner, who've talked about the cost cutting or indeed cutting corners by Boeing as far as the commissioning of the plane itself is concerned, who've talked about various inadequacies, especially relating to hydraulics. And a similar loss, sudden descent, loss of height, happened almost a year ago, in fact 14 months ago, on a Dreamliner flight from Sydney to Auckland, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was Chilean Airlines. And there was a sudden descent which is what we've seen, at least from the visuals that I can see. And the one of the panelists was talking about that after the V1, the descent was reached, and it is highly unusual for a plane to then suddenly lose descent.
Right.
I think many people have ruled out the possibility of a bird hit at that height.
Okay.
As far as the survivor is concerned, Akanksha, it's an absolute miracle, and I'm so happy, at least in this unearthly hour, ungodly hour, to have this small bit of news, good news, and I hope that he's able to, he looks pretty fit under the circumstances.
True.
And he will be giving us vital information about about what happened. Yes.
True, he's the only silver lining at the moment, and perhaps, in fact, latest visuals coming in to take our viewers through these visuals that have just come in. These are critical moments before that Indian Airlines flight took off. Just critical moments of that entire takeoff that have been accessed by CNN News 18 before it crashed. But as flight, this is in fact just the takeoff, and it led to the crash soon after it takes off. This is the entire video that we have accessed for you that shows that entire takeoff till the moment where it leads to that catastrophic explosion, as you can see. And those visuals in fact indicating that the moment when the AI171 actually took off. And as you can see, those visuals actually speaking for themselves, that as Mr. Ramesh's testimony goes, that it was a loud explosion and within 30 seconds it was all over. And I want to bring in Captain Ehsan Khalid. The video speaks for itself. Captain Khalid. All right, we'll bring in DBS Gujaral over there. DG Flight Safety of Air Costa is also with us. Mr. Gujaral, what do you make of these visuals? They are also in alignment with the testimony that's come in of Mr. Ramesh, who said that it was all over within 30 seconds.
First of all, my condolences to the families who have lost their loved ones in this accident. And I would like to say that this particular crash has got an international ramifications as far as Boeing 787 is concerned. Now, I have been watching and listening to the various people who have been coming on the television and expressing their views about this accident. But to my mind, it's too early to say anything about the cause of this accident, as there was very little time between the takeoff and the accident, and the time between the takeoff and the time when Mayday call was given. After that, there could not have been any conversation between the ATC and the pilot, and all this little time is having all the answers hidden into the black box, that is digital flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder. Once we decode it, there may be or may not be, there may be answers to all the questions that everybody is asking. And to my mind, we cannot rule out the role of any one of the factors, that is the controls, the engines and the environmental factors. We have to combine them all and study as to what possibly could have happened when the aircraft just took off and crashed within a few kilometers of the airport and went into a building. As far as the disaster is concerned, this sole survivor, as you have said, is very fortunate, and he is a crucial witness. And the loud thought or noise that he is expressing must have been recorded in the flight data recorder, and it will have the answer from that.
I want to quickly go across to
Yes.
Tejinder, who is joining us on the phone line with more inputs. Tejinder, this is a very, very crucial piece of footage that has been accessed, which we are playing out for our viewers right now. Very crucial moments of AI171's takeoff, and in fact, that also goes on to indicate that it was a matter of seconds that soon after the takeoff, the crash happened.
Indeed, this is a very crucial piece of information that we have been able to access, which clearly shows that within less than 30 seconds, if you can see that the flight, this ill-fated flight, when it takes off, it crashes, and then we can see a huge plume of fire and smoke coming from the area. Though the various agencies are now looking into this CCTV footage as well. And they are trying to find out because the black box of this ill-fated flight is yet to be retrieved. Fortunately, there has been only one. There has been a survival, while unfortunately every other passenger on the plane have been killed in this unfortunate incident which happened this afternoon. But yes, a crucial piece of CCTV footage which CNN News 18 has been able to access, which clearly show that. Soon after the takeoff, this ill-fated flight, it could not continue with its ascent, and it crashed. And then we can see a huge plume, a fireball and smoke, which led to the death of all the passengers. But yes, there has been one survival in this ill-fated aircraft. Yes.
Absolutely, it is, and I actually want to bring in Mr. Air Commodore BS Catch also, who's with us right now. So, what do you make of these visuals? Because contrary to what Flight Radar 24 was reporting, that it was 20 minutes after takeoff, now these visuals actually go on to testify also what Mr. Ramesh has been stating, that it was a loud explosion and within 30 seconds this entire catastrophic crash took place.
Very ghastly, very terrible loss of lives, very shocking news. Our heartfelt condolences from Aviation Safety India, and our prayer to God for the speedy recovery of those who are injured. Now, in this particular accident, the aircraft was fully serviceable. Pilots were absolutely well qualified with good experience. Weather was reasonably good. The aircraft was fully serviceable. The aircraft has taken off. Actually, it has come from Delhi. So, aircraft was fully serviceable. It landed there, got turned around, loaded its passenger, and again took off. Till takeoff, there was no problem. The aircraft was climbing after takeoff at about 425 feet. That is what is being talked about is 625 feet. The Ahmedabad runway elevation is about 180 odd feet. So let's assume 200 feet. So aircraft was just at 425 feet. It experienced sudden loss of power. We must commend the presence of mind of the pilot that at such low altitude loss of power, he immediately informed ATC in the form of mayday call that there is a serious threat to the safety of the aircraft and passengers. So it's creditable on the part of the pilot without losing cool, and still he continued because now he had loss of power, so he could not continue the climb. He started descending because of the loss of power. Loss of power can be attributed to so many reasons. This Ahmedabad airport is notorious for bird strike. So bird strike to both the engine can lead to the shutdown of both the engines. And the passenger who was survived, he also talked about some loud noise. So loud noise possibly has come from engines,
Right.
which was possibly maybe bird hit, and thereafter loss of engine power. Pilot transmitted ATC, tried to avoid buildings. Unfortunately, he was helpless. He had no control over the aircraft because there was no power in the aircraft, and eventually the aircraft crashed.
Right.
Very, very terrible accident. The Boeing 787 Dreamliner is a very safe aircraft. Initially, it had some troubles. These are called teething troubles, which had been resolved. Now, this aircraft is being flown by large number of airlines, almost 1,200 aircrafts are flying around the world. They must have conducted millions of flights. There have been no such accident. Remember, in aircraft operation, there are only two phases of flight which are very, very critical. One is takeoff and another landing.
Okay.
Most of the accident happen during this phase.
Okay.
Most of the accident take place during landing. Takeoff, there is very rare. This is one of the rarest of the accidents. There have been accidents, I'm not saying that, but it is very rare. Landing accidents have been plenty. So this accident, takeoff accident, obviously chances of surviving the crash because the aircraft had more than 1 lakh liters of fuel. So it's like a bomb blast. The fuel caught fire and of course there was a large flame. It is very miraculous, very surprising and very good news that at least one person who survived this Holocaust.
I want to bring in Captain Chinta on that note. Captain Chinta, this is a very significant and pivotal piece of footage, and I'm sure this will also be aiding the ongoing investigation. But what is your assessment? Because as we said, that this is now fresh information corroborated by these visuals that the blast happened within 30 seconds as the plane takes off and it crashes within 30 seconds. What is your assessment and what are the questions that are coming to your mind? Of course, we all know that 65 to 70,000 liters of fuel was being carried in this flight, given that it was Gatwick bound, and that it sort of sheds light on the size of the explosion. But what is it that comes to your mind when you look at how rapidly the descent happens, eventually leading to the crash?
Well, this video makes it amply clear that it did gain height at some point of time. It's lost because you can see some smoke coming out of the engines. So just before it starts descent from this new video which is there. So something did lead to loss of power on both those engines. And an aircraft which is going to be close to 200 tons weight for 240 odd passengers and 60 tons of fuel. Approximately we can take a guess estimate of about 200 tons for a 787 to fly from Ahmedabad to London. So with no power being generated, 200 tons would come down that quickly, as you can see from that video. So the pilots did a miraculous job of maintaining full control and maintaining wings level all the way down to the impact. If they had even slight amount of bank, we wouldn't have seen even that sole survivor which we have.
All right, Mr. Gujaral, I want to quickly bring you in before I take closing thoughts from Anand. Mr. Gujaral, what comes to your mind when you look at these visuals? Within 30 seconds, the crash happened as soon after the takeoff, and that also aligns with the testimony that's come in from the lone survivor. I'd like your thoughts.
Thank you so much for bringing me in. What I find is that there are so many factors coming into my mind when I listen to and watch the visual on the TV. But there is one very crucial question. Why did the aircraft did not gain the height? The loss of height is not being explained by any of these arguments, right? Whether it was fuel starvation, whether it was something else, or whether it was failure of the engines, or whether it was bird ingestion. All these questions are being answered by the silent listener, that is called black box. Once we get the answer from the flight data recorder, once we decode it, and once we listen to the cockpit voice recorder, the pilot's conversation will come to us. The parameters that are recorded in the flight data recorder will be in front of us for finding out at least as to what exactly at that moment in a very brief short time happened. As far as the aircraft is concerned, it flew from Delhi to Ahmedabad. It was trouble free, and in every transit the aircraft is checked up thoroughly before it is cleared for the next flight, and the same must have been done by the engineering staff at Ahmedabad as well. But what happened between those few seconds and after the loud explosion which our friend survivor is telling, These questions will be answered only when we decode the flight data recorder. The pilots are definitely experienced and qualified, and I understand that Captain Sabrawal was a line training captain. Such position is given only to the pilots who are well briefed, well qualified and well experienced. As the Air Commodore has said, it's definitely a compliment to the pilots who maintained their calm even at that critical moment when perhaps they saw there was no chance to survive. I think it's a great compliment to their professional skill and to the maintenance of the aircraft, which was definitely trouble-free when it arrived from Delhi. Thank you so much.
Stay with me, Mr. Gujaral. I also want to bring in Anand. Anand, I think you were raising a very critical point. While it is fairly nascent to probe into what exactly led to the air crash, there are many who are also raising questions about whether or not this calls for a quality control for Boeing, because remember there's talk about how the Boeing 787 Dreamliner was also facing numerous quality controls, and the FAA and Boeing both had in fact paused its deliveries between the year 2021 and 2023 because it was not just facing numerous quality control issues but also manufacturing issues, and there were reworks being called for within these Boeing Dreamliners.
No, absolutely. But, I have to say this, that your video, it is clear. Thank you for airing it. I think it's quite clear from those visuals
let me just play up Mr. N. Chandrasekharan's phone conversation that he's had with CNN News 18's Sharon Elizabeth. Let's listen.
Mr. Chandrasekharan, many thanks for joining us here. To start with, on behalf of everyone here at CNBC TV 18, our deepest condolences to you and the Air India family and to the families of those who've lost their lives. I want to start by asking you, sir, what is the latest in terms of the information that you can share with us? You are in Ahmedabad, you've met with officials. I would appreciate any latest information that you can share with us to elaborate on what has transpired.
First of all, Sharon, it is a totally devastating tragedy, and we are all totally shocked and deeply affected, and our immediate focus is to help the people, the families of people who have experienced this tragedy. We are working to that at this point in time. We are trying to set up all the support systems, the emergency helpline number, and on-the-ground support. A lot of people from Air India have flown from Delhi to be here on the ground. So we're creating all those infrastructure. While we are trying to do all of this, we are also working with the authorities to see the investigation and the root cause, etc. I have spoken to the CEO of Boeing, and I've also asked him to send the best expert to work with us in this whole process, and they are very supportive. And we have a lot of questions, but we need to wait because we need to have authentic information. So as we get these informations, we will immediately share without any delay. And to help the families, we just announced that we will provide 1 crore for each family of the person who lost their life. And also we will be providing all the medical related expenses for all the people who are injured. And we would also try to help to rebuild that infrastructure in the hostel where the crash actually happened. As you talk to me, we are moving in multiple directions. This is totally a devastating experience, and I have no words to say anything.
I appreciate you joining us today, sir. I know that this is a very difficult period. And I just wanted to understand from you, there is a lot of speculation, and I would like to hear it from you. Do we have an update on whether there are any survivors? There are some indications, some comments coming in that there are some survivors. If you can share with us the information that you have, Mr. Chandrasekharan.
So I don't have the exact number, and I'm also hearing from you. I also have the information that maybe there is a survivor, but we still don't have confirmation. I'm waiting for authentic information. I'm talking to the government. As you know, the government is on top of it here, and I'm in constant touch with them. And they are in touch with the hospital authorities. And so we just want to make sure that we don't give any wrong information. So a single source of information is the best in these circumstances, because any misleading information or speculation is going to be going to complicate matters.
It is a terrible, terrible evening for all of India, in fact, all of the world, because this is one of the most terrible air tragedies that has happened, not just here in India, but anywhere across in aviation history. Air India Flight 171 from Ahmedabad to London Gatwick, with 232 passengers and 10 crew members on board, crashed within a minute of takeoff from the Ahmedabad airport at 1:38 this afternoon. The plane was carrying 169 Indians, 53 British nationals, 7 Portuguese and 1 Canadian passenger. It was bound for London Gatwick. Hundreds have been declared dead, including the former Chief Minister of Gujarat, Vijay Rupani, who was one of the passengers who was on board that ill-fated flight. The aircraft involved was the Boeing 787 Dreamliner. It is the very first time that the Dreamliner flight is crashing in such a fashion. The pilots have believed to have lost both engines, and it plunged very quickly within seconds after taking off. In fact, that video clip that we're playing shows that the entire sequence of events happened within a minute after takeoff of this ill-fated flight AI171. The London-bound flight took off from Ahmedabad. It was exactly at 1:39 in the afternoon today, but within a minute it crashed about 5 kilometers or so away from the BJ Medical College and Hospital. It crashed into a building which is believed to be a residential compound, hostel facility for undergraduate medical students. This was lunchtime, it was peak hour, and there were a lot of undergraduate medical students who were there in that building having their lunch or coming to the mess or the canteen to have their lunch. So a large number of the people who were in that building could have also died. We're given to understand about 30 people have been moved from this building who were on the ground in this building. They've been taken to hospital. We don't know the number of fatalities there. But as far as the people who were on board this flight is concerned, other than one survivor, Ramesh Vishwash Kumar, who was sitting on seat number 11A, closest to the emergency exit, and once the plane crashed, he jumped out through the emergency exit. He is the lone survivor out of 242 people who were on board this flight AI171 Ahmedabad to London. He, of course, those are the pictures from earlier this afternoon, jumped off the aircraft, limped away, and then an ambulance took him to hospital. He said that he was lucky to survive. He jumped off the aircraft. He saw dead bodies and mangled remains around him, wreckage of the plane around him. He was very scared, he said, and then he ran away, and then somebody took him in an ambulance to hospital. He is the lone survivor. What a miracle story this is for him and his family members. I believe he was also traveling with some of his family members back from Ahmedabad. He was going back to London. He's a British citizen. He was in India for a few days to celebrate some functions back home, but he was on his way back to London, and he managed to survive. But he is the sole survivor that we know of. All the other passengers, I'm afraid, are dead in this flight. So what exactly transpired? Because this flight, clearly from the images you can see, failed to achieve critical liftoff. In fact, it reached about 600 feet in the air and then immediately after that started descending, almost gliding down for the crash that eventually happened. So what exactly transpired? The initial data from flight Air India 171 shows that the aircraft reached a maximum barometric altitude of 625 feet. That's the maximum that it reached. The airport altitude is about 200 feet. So right after it reached 625 feet, immediately after that, there was a mayday call that was made by the pilot to the air traffic control, but there was no communication that was established between the air traffic control and the pilot following that call. Post that call, which happened within 30 seconds of takeoff, the plane began to descend within vertical speed of 475 feet per minute. Then it crashed just outside the perimeter of the airport. It crashed into a hostel cum residential facility that was meant for undergraduate medical students, and a large number of students who had gathered there during the peak lunch hour time. I'm afraid, could have also fallen victim to this fatal air crash. Now, in the various videos that have been accessed of this horrific crash, the very moment of the crash was caught in one of these videos. You can see how the plane, it takes off. It travels barely a few kilometers. We're given to understand about 5 odd kilometers. And right after that, it crashes into the building below. There's been massive damage on the ground as well in this residential complex, in this hostel complex. But in the videos of the aftermath, the extent of the damage is also clearly visible. There's a huge plume of smoke and fire and gas. The debris lay scattered all around, even as firefighters and emergency responders rushed to the site. One of the parts of the ill-fated plane, in fact, landed on top of a hostel mess. It was a medical residential facility meant for undergraduate medical students in Ahmedabad. It resulted in considerable damage and loss of lives. The visuals from inside the affected complex also show massive damage to the structure of the building itself. In fact, a large part of that building caved in because of the sheer impact of the crash. In yet another video, you can see the aftermath of the crash. You can see, a huge plume of smoke there, a lot of fire, a lot of thick black smoke around that area just rising into the sky. Remember, this was a flight that was meant to be about 8 to 9 hours between Ahmedabad and London Gatwick. So it had a tank full of aviation fuel, about 60,000 liters plus of aviation fuel. So all of that would have come down in this crash. The fire that emanated gutted multiple buildings, but the main point of impact was this residential hostel complex right on the outskirts of the airport. And of course, the surrounding areas were also badly hit. But then the question that everybody is asking is, what led to this crash? The 787 Dreamliner is one of the safest aircraft in the world. It's been in service for close to 15 years now, and it has not seen even one major accident. This is the first of its kind accident involving a 787 Dreamliner. What could have possibly led to it? This 787 Dreamliner, this particular aircraft, was delivered to Air India in January of 2014. This is the first recorded crash of a Boeing 787 anywhere in the world, and this is what has raised eyebrows. There was a Guardian report back in 2024 where Guardian was interviewing a whistleblower who used to work with Boeing. He's been named as Sam Salehpour, who's an engineer with Boeing. He worked with Boeing for over a decade. He urged Boeing in that interview to ground every single 787 Dreamliner worldwide. He warned that the 787s were at a risk of premature failure. The whistleblower also alleged that Boeing took shortcuts to reduce the production bottlenecks while making the 787. He also raised issues about the production of the 777. He also alleged that he faced retaliation from the company, including threats and exclusion from meetings after raising concerns over these issues, including a gap between the parts of the fuselage and the remainder of the body of the 787. Now, while this is one isolated report, this came out in 2024, Boeing didn't necessarily take any action, at least certainly did not ground the 787 fleet. After this interview, after this Guardian report came out, it did raise questions about the safety of passengers. Many questions are being asked in the aftermath of this crash, many for which answers will be sought for, but right now these questions are unanswered. Number one, was there any kind of technical issue that was detected before this flight took off, either the day before the flight or moments before this flight took off. Remember, this flight also had arrived from Delhi. This was an Delhi Ahmedabad flight first, a 2-hour flight, and then it was subsequently meant to be an Ahmedabad London Gatwick flight. So was there any technical snag or any issue noticed in the first flight that was between Delhi and Ahmedabad? What prompted the pilot to issue an SOS or a mayday call, and that too within a minute of takeoff? You can see just how quickly, within moments of takeoff, it reaches about 600 feet in height and then immediately starts gliding down or sliding down. Could any kind of foul play or angle of foul play be ruled out officially by Boeing, by Air India, and of course by government authorities, including the DGCA, which will do a thorough audit and a thorough check of what exactly led to this crash? The other question that's being asked, will all Boeing 787 flights, certainly Indian operators, Air India operates a lot of 787 Dreamliners, will they be grounded following this flight, this crash? Will the black box and the voice recorder instruments that are there on board all flights, will they be recovered, and will they unlock the mystery that led to this plane crash? I want to first go across to Mr. Jitendra Bhargav. He's a former executive director with Air India. Mr. Bhargav, thank you very much for joining us. This particular Air India crash will go down in history. It's the deadliest. It's the first time that a Dreamliner 787 has crashed like this. From whatever you can see in this footage, the flight taking off within a minute, it sort of starts descending. Within a minute, we're given to understand the mayday call was made by the pilot, and then the plane crashes. What do you think could have possibly gone wrong from whatever you've seen in the available footage?
No, it's a very horrific incident. This accident has taken place. We are all very sorry about it. Having worked for Air India, I felt very dejected for the first 2 hours. Did not know how to react to the situation. But the irony has been that it's happened during daytime. You had a captain in the cockpit, commander who had 8,000 plus hours of flying experience. You had an aircraft, Dreamliner, which has a relatively good safety track record. What can possibly go wrong? But rather than hazard a guess or speculate, I'll wait for the formal inquiry involving Boeing as the manufacturer of the aircraft, Dreamliner, which is involved, airline, Air India, and India's regulatory agency, DGCA, to decode the black box, come to a conclusion and say this is what happened. Because the standard operating procedure in an airline industry is that when an accident takes place, you come to the conclusion, and if any lessons have to be learned, deficiencies, technical deficiency in an aircraft, pilot training, etc., then you try and rectify it. So let's wait for it and say get on. But except for, of course, for the moment, our heart goes out to the passengers' families and to the people on ground. You see, the tragedy has been that it happened during daytime, but what would have been a beneficial thing happening in daytime was that a pilot could have possibly steered the aircraft to a place which is barren, which had no thing. But the time available to the pilot was so short.
He hardly had any
After
time.
takeoff, a few minutes getting onto an altitude of no more than 700 feet and then hurtling down at a fixed speed. You can't even control. You can't even dump fuel.
All right.
Because if the fuel he had the chance to, opportunity to dump fuel, the fire would not have engulfed the aircraft in the way it did. And the survival rate would have been much higher. And of course, we have only one case at the moment, but let's hope there are more people who survived.
I do want to know from you, Mr. Bhargav, there have been reports that it could have been a technical error, some kind of a technical failure, and that could have led to the eventual mayday call. And the mayday call happened within a minute of takeoff. In fact, the entire thing happened within a minute of takeoff and then the crash itself. What could possibly be the reason for why and how so quickly the pilot made that mayday call? Because it indicates that within moments of takeoff, he realized that something was wrong. What could it have been?
Oh, no, certainly not. You see, let's put it this way. If there was a technical fault and somebody had to conclude, because it is not that the Air India will ground the Dreamliner if there is a reason for it. All airlines world over operating Dreamliners will have to do it likewise if the Boeing was to issue an advisory. Clearly speaking, we can't jump to a conclusion and say it happened because of a technical fault. Whether it is technical, aircraft defect, or it is maintenance fault, One will only come after the inquiry has been concluded. Let's not jump to conclusion and say, look, the aircraft needs to be grounded, etc. It could be an aircraft war, all right, aircraft manufacturers war to say, let's put it this way. But as an airline man, I would say no, there is no need for grounding of Dreamliners at this stage.
All right, Mr. Bhargav, we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much. Jitendra Bhargav is former executive director with Air India. I want to now open this up to our guests who are joining us. Captain Sam Thomas is a former pilot and president of the Airline Pilots Association of India. Alpa Y. N. Sharma is CEO of Chimes Aviation. Sanjay Lazar, aviation expert and CEO of Avia Labs. And Devendra Padnikar is former cabin crew with Air India. Let me start with you, Captain Sam Thomas. You know, a couple of things stand out. Obviously, within a minute after takeoff, the captain realizes that something's wrong. He issues a mayday call. The flight barely makes past 5 kilometers, barely makes it to about 600 feet. And from these pictures, it's clear that there was some issue with the liftoff of the flight. He was not able to acquire enough momentum for liftoff. That's why it didn't go up beyond 600 feet. What do you think could have possibly gone wrong?
Good evening, Zaka. First of all, our hearts and prayers with the victims. And at this time, the usual caveat, I or anybody else would not be authoritatively able to tell you what the reasons for this particular crash has happened. However, we understand that the public at large would like to know and get some answers. And that is what we'll try and address at this time. From the visuals that are being played out, it's very difficult to hazard a guess. But within our groups, firstly, there is a somber kind of moment, and nobody is talking to anybody at this time. And it's too early to figure out exactly what has happened without the DFDR data. Having said that, it appears that this airplane is not developing power on both the engines, and that could be, though it's completely under the realms of speculation, that is what at the moment we feel it is.
But how can a flight lose power in both engines? I mean, that's like a 1 in a million chance that both engines fail and fail at the same time.
Yes, it has happened. This is the third occurrence that I can remember during my career of 30 years. If you remember, the miracle at Hudson, where the airplane lost both its engines due to a bird hit. A flock of birds went into both the engines. And also there was a 777 that landed short of London Heathrow because of fuel contamination. And this is the third time. If our conjecture is correct, then this would be the third time in the history of aviation that it is happening. So there is nothing with regard to machine that we can authoritatively say that it will not fail. And no matter how many redundant systems you have, there have been cases of failures, and this probably appears to be one of them.
Mr. Y. N. Sharma of Chimes Aviation, the Dreamliner, the 787, is arguably one of the safest aircraft in the world in the almost 15 years that it's been in service. And I believe this particular aircraft was drafted into Air India in 2014. So this particular aircraft itself has been in service for more than 10 years. The Dreamliner has not had a single case of an accident. So surely something awfully wrong must have happened with this particular aircraft. Does it raise suspicion that, as the captain said a moment ago, there have been only 3 instances where both engines of an aircraft have failed at the same time?
At the outset, first, let me just express my deep anguish at this unfortunate incident. Now, as my fellow panelist was saying, that the instances which have been reported on this aircraft earlier, where both engines have failed simultaneously, have been clearly attributed to the causes were identified. In one case, it was a flock of birds that flew into both the engines. At the second time, it was fuel contamination. Right now, till the time the data is analyzed, it is absolutely premature to hazard any kind of guess on what could be, the reason here. But it does look as if just after takeoff, the aircraft seems to have lost power. and has just descended. And it doesn't look as if it went very far. It looks, as you said, the altitude of Ahmedabad airport is 200 feet. It seems to have recorded a total height of 600, which means that it just attained a height of 400 feet before it started descending.
Correct.
And it could be anything is possible. It could be a flock of birds which could have flown in and incapacitated both the engines. That could be one of the reasons. It could be override to the pilot input. That's also possible. But all these things one would know only after the data recorders are analyzed, and our investigating authorities, which is the Aircraft Investigation Bureau and the DGCA, they do a thorough inquiry and give us the answers that we seek.
Mr. Sanjay Lazar, this was the same flight. It was a Delhi, Ahmedabad, and then after that from Ahmedabad to London Gatwick. So this flight had gone 2 hours from Delhi to Ahmedabad. The crew changed in Ahmedabad. But if there was anything wrong, would it have been sort of flagged in the previous leg of this flight?
Thanks for having me, Zaka. First of all, my condolences to all the families of the crew, the pilots, the cabin crew, passengers, and of course, the students in the hostel. It's a dark day for Indian aviation and for Air India in particular. When we look at this aircraft, it's flown from Delhi to Ahmedabad, and obviously everything was fine. It's done its mandatory pre-flight checks also. Let's not forget that. There was probably an AME and a ground engineer who would have looked at the aircraft. The pilot in command or the first officer would have done his walk around and checks. So let's understand this was a perfectly fine aircraft. This aircraft is 11 and a half years in service, and one of the newer ones. Like you said in your introduction, the 787 is a very reliable machine and has been, there are more than 1,200 of them flying in the world today.
Yeah.
So when we enter into discussion on this, we shouldn't get into the realm of speculation. The video you've shown is a very telling comment. It obviously means, like Captain Thomas has pointed out, either something catastrophic has happened to both engines, like bird ingestion in both engines, or just mechanical failure or engine failure in both. But what is important is the commander gave a mayday call at 13:59 or 13:39 hours, and there was also an ACAS message, I'm told, but that's not confirmed as yet. But it's very clear that he lost lift, he lost thrust, and it dropped like a stone.
What are the conditions, or what are the scenarios in which an aircraft at the time of takeoff loses lift?
Well, obviously failure of the engine, or some problem with the engine. If birds hit the engine, it would completely seize. So if a flock of vultures or any large type of birds, and Ahmedabad is notorious for a lot of this instances. So it's quite possible. But it's the key thing here is that the aircraft wasn't lifting, and then it just crashed into that hostel building. You saw a part of the tail on the roof, and then the aircraft collided. Yeah? It's miraculous that we saw one survivor, and I pray to God there are more, because we need miracles like that. Looking at such a grim situation today.
Before I go to Devendra Padnakar, I think Mr. Lazar made
just one point. Both these pilots were highly experienced pilots.
Exactly.
Okay, Captain Sabharwal was 8,200 hours.
Correct.
The other pilot was 1,100 hours. So that's almost 10,000 hours of flying.
Yeah.
So let's respect that as well. They've tried to manage this. We don't know what happened. We'll get to know after the investigation.
I just want to show you this story of hope, really, the only silver lining of hope amongst the 240 plus who have died. This one gentleman, Ramesh Vishwash Kumar, and I want to go to Devendra Padnakar on this. He was sitting, I believe, on 11A, which is the seat that is closest to the emergency exit. It's the first row of economy. He was traveling with some of his family members. The manifest says, which is different from the boarding pass number. The boarding pass, it says 11A, but the manifest says he was supposed to sit in 11J, and a lady was supposed to sit in 11A. In any case, when the flight took off, he was in the window seat. He was in 11A, the first seat in the economy row. The flight crashes. He's closest to the emergency exit. He jumps out, and then he spoke to some reporters there, and he said, I couldn't see anything. It was just a huge ball of smoke and fire, and there were mangled remains all around me. I got scared. I started running, and then somebody came with an ambulance, and they put me in an ambulance and took me to hospital. A phenomenal story of walking away from the dead, almost cheating death. There were 200 plus others on that same flight, and all of them are dead, Devendra Padnakar, and this man survived. What a story. I mean, he will live to tell this tale till the rest of his life.
Yeah, it's indeed a miracle. I mean, that would be 1 in a billion that could happen, someone just escaping death like this. But, I mean, I feel sorry for everyone who's lost their lives, right from the crew members to the cockpit crew, to the civilians the plane crashed on, to the passengers who were flying on that aircraft. It is very shocking, till the day when I flew, I was always dreading that something like this should never happen to anybody over the entire world. But today I'm seeing this, and I'm still in shock from the afternoon itself that, something like that, and I still can't believe, something like that has already happened. And I see a survivor like this who's escaped. He's truly blessed. But I don't know, I'm just short of words of not being able to express how deeply saddened I am with whatever's happened today.
Can you also sort of understand, and from the pictures that we're seeing, within the first 30 seconds, it takes off till about 600 feet and then immediately starts dropping almost like, somebody threw a big rock from the sky. Clearly, there was no control there. What could have possibly led to this?
Like Captain Thomas said, that there could be endless possibilities that could happen, and we speculating on them is really not, to be considered. But I feel that, there is very little chance of anticipation when something like this happens, and it is just seconds where you fall and then you realize that you were amidst a crash, or you're not even there to even express that. So I wouldn't know what exactly happened, but we should wait and we should see what the governing authorities have to, find out about why this crash actually happened, and we come to know more into it.
I also want to see if we can go across to my colleague Arunima. She's just landed at the Ahmedabad airport. Remember, the airport was shut for a couple of hours, in fact more than a couple of hours, from about 2 o'clock till 4 o'clock, and then after which it reopened. So if Arunima is there, we'll try and go across to her. We'll try and get her. But Captain Thomas, what are the various inquiries that will now get ordered? Obviously, Boeing will have its own inquiry. I would imagine the DGCA will have that as well. And what would it take to understand what happened on this flight and what led to this crash?
Yeah, Zaka, the most important thing is the investigation now. And Air Accident Investigation Board, that's the AAIB of India, would be involved along with DGCA. And they have a mandate of about 30 days within which they have to give a preliminary report. And the DFDR, CVR, ACARs, all will be analyzed threadbare. And the OEMs, the engine manufacturers, the airframe Boeing, and anybody even remotely connected with the avionics would be a part of this investigation. What we in India sometimes find lacking is the transparency that happens. And that is why we from Alpha India want to reach out to the people and say that we would also like to be a part of this investigation, as we are, quite a few of us are certified investigators. And so that it's not a blame game that happens. A part of investigation is to find out the exact cause and to mitigate that risk so that never in future this particular incident happens. Now, we in India sadly lack qualified investigators, and that could be one of the reasons why a lot of the FAA and NTSB investigators would be called in. And we want the exact report of as it happened with the exact causes to come out so that the traveling public is made aware of what exactly transpired on this particular flight.
Yeah, Sanjay Azhar, before we go to Arunima, a quick word. the previous major accidents, air accidents that we've seen here in India, one was, I think, the Kozhikode runway crash. Again, the flight, I believe, overran the runway. Similarly, about more than 10 years ago, there was the Mangalore crash, which was a tabletop runway. Again, it sort of fell off that tabletop runway and into the jungles. But we haven't seen anything of this kind, where a flight is taking off and within a minute or so after takeoff, it just glides down, like you said, drops dead like a rock, and crashes into the ground.
It's in fact the first wide-body aircraft to crash in 40 years in India. The last one we had was 1978, Emperor Ashoka, then the Emperor Kanishka, which was bombed outside our island. So this is really the first wide-body that we've seen. The other two were narrow-body aircrafts that we've had, and in between we've had a few narrow-body Airbus aircrafts, in the late 80s and early 90s. It is shocking and it's never seen. But I also wanted to point out, you spoke of the survivor being in 11A and he was actually supposed to be in 11J, and a lady was supposed to be in 11A. The lady tweeted the picture of herself in 11J with the ex-chief minister of Gujarat, and probably her last picture, and so obviously they'd interchanged seats. It's so eerie that this would happen. It's something that none of us could ever imagine would happen. It's a scary thought.
Yeah. I want to sort of go back to our guests. I believe Arunima will be patched through in just a minute as well. Mr. Sharma is still with us. So again, Mr. Sharma, taking the story forward, like obviously as Captain Thomas said, they'll have to recover the black box, the voice recording systems, etc., from the debris. Typically, how long do these investigations take? The only other instances we've seen in the case of a Boeing aircraft, at one point the 737 Maxes had to be grounded because of repeated crashes and so on and so forth. But with the 787, like I said, there's never been a crash ever in the 787. Typically, what would it take? A month, 3 months before we know what exactly happened on board AI171?
The investigation which is done by AIB is a very, very thorough process. They look at each and every aspect. And for certain things, they would require reports, equipment in some cases is sent for testing, and you get the reports from there. So the timeline, could be anything from, you could know with the FDR, you could know the most probable cause in the first 30 days itself, or it could take longer. But normally we see that these kind of investigations take, a couple of months before any kind of definitive answer can be given on what could be the cause. As the captain speaking earlier was saying, these pilots also very experienced people. The pilot in command had 8,000 hours, was an alumni from one of the best flying training schools in the country, GRUA. He's an alumni from there, I believe. So, all these factors will be taken into account. All the data will be analyzed before any kind of a definitive answer would be given to the public on what exactly caused this unfortunate incident to happen.
All right, Mr. Sharma, Captain Thomas, Mr. Lazar, and of course Mr. Padnikar, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you indeed, as we condole these deaths and join the families in this terrible, terrible hour of grief. Arunima, my colleague, is just landed at the Ahmedabad airport. She's now joining us live. Arunima, what are you seeing around you? Is the airport now back to fully functional? Have the number of flights, the traffic, has it been impacted in any significant way?
So that, yes, I've just landed. Telltale signs of the kind of chaos that Ahmedabad airport has seen over the last 6-7 hours. It's visible. We are in the arrival lounge, mostly empty. I think the first 2 flights have just landed here. But in the departure lounge, while we were coming in, we saw many passengers waiting there. There were huge queues. Many passengers were sitting on the floor. I think the airlines had provided them with food packets considering the delay. Many could not take off because the operationalization of the airport took time. Once the accident or the air crash was reported, I think for about 4 hours the airport was shut. So owing to the delay, there is now a backlog, And that's why in the departure hall, there are kids, there are elderlies, and there are other, normal-aged passengers, middle-aged passengers who are still waiting. I could also see a lot more CISF officials on duty here, trying to ensure that the VIP movement that is happening. A number of VIPs have also landed. Home Minister Amit Shah is here. Also, Civil Aviation Minister has landed. So outside too, in fact, our vehicle is unable to get to the airport area because outside the airport and the crash site is not very far. There's a huge traffic jam outside of the airport as well, as we are told.
Did you get a chance to sort of speak to people there who've just landed? Obviously, everybody's heard about this news. This has been the only story since about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. On the flight from Delhi to Ahmedabad too, this must have been the topic of conversation. What were people saying about this unfortunate tragedy?
So I was on a Boeing flight as well. Boeing flight is the one that has crashed. So there was a lot of sense of anxiety, especially when the security announcements were being made by the crew. It was routine announcement, but in terms of emergency, what is it that you should do? Everybody, this time around, most people around me were listening to the crew with a lot of attention. Nobody was looking at their mobile. Nobody was looking out of the window. They were paying attention, especially the part where they said, what should you do? And we are told at least one passenger managed to jump out of the emergency door and survive. So I think that security announcement helped. Second is when the flight landed here at Ahmedabad, we saw some people clapping. Most passengers here are people who belong to Ahmedabad or who speak Gujarati. So there were some Gujarati greetings that were exchanged. Some people clapped. Many called up their loved ones. And I can tell you, the crew members also, when I chit-chatted with them, they told me that for their family members, it has been a very, very anxious last 5-6 hours. They were still on duty. When we took off from Delhi, it was not clear whether the flight will land or not because the Ahmedabad airport was not operational. But finally, when the green signal was received, the crew and their family members too spent some anxious moments before they finally touched down in Ahmedabad safe.
All right, Arunima, we'll leave it at that. Before we go back to other guests who will be joining us in the latter part of this program, I also want to bring you up to speed with the timeline. First, show you that video. It's a matter of just 30 seconds after it is airborne, after it is nose up, as they say, once the flight is up in the air, once it's nose up. It's just a matter of 30 seconds. It just comes gliding down, almost like somebody dropped a giant rock from the skies. And then at 1:39, within a minute of takeoff, it crashes onto this hostel building. It's attached to a medical institution. There were undergraduate medical students who were there, who had gathered there for lunch. It was lunchtime at 1:39 in the afternoon this afternoon, and it crashes into this building. So there are fatalities, not just of the people who were on board, other than one person who miraculously managed to survive. There is also, I'm afraid, a large number of fatalities on the ground. About 30 bodies from the ground, people who were on the ground, have been shifted to the hospital as well. 30 people have been taken to hospital, some of them in grievous injury. It is really a matter of concern because investigators will be probing this for days, for months now, to find out what is it that led to such a crash, because it's so dramatic. It's not like this flight was mid-air for an hour or a couple of hours, or that it was something that happened at the time of landing. This is within a minute of takeoff for the captain to send a SOS message or a mayday call to the ATC. No communication then between the ATC and the captain of the flight. And despite the fact that this is an aircraft which has a stellar record of safety. There's not been a single instance of an air crash involving a Dreamliner 787. This is the very first one. And if you look at that, once the flight takes off, within 30 seconds after its nose up, it just comes crashing down. One of the things that people have pointed to after looking at this footage 2 or 3 times is that the landing gear has not been drawn in. It is still out. I don't know. I'm not an expert, so I don't know if that is a particular cause of concern. Let's try and ask Captain Sam Thomas that. He's a former pilot and the president of the Airline Pilot Association of India. The fact that the landing gear has not gone in, Angad Singh is also joining us, aviation expert. Would you make much of that, Captain Thomas?
Oh, well, it appears that there is a startle effect on whatever has happened. And this is very common that the moment you notice something that is not normal, your complete attention is shifted towards that. And that is the reason he might have not called for. Now, this is speculation, all speculation. I must put it up. There is a good reason that he would be attending to the engine emergency or any emergency that has come up and not elected to take the gear up. Now, if from what I can see, if he's having a loss of thrust on both engines, it would not be a wise thing to put up that landing gear up. Having said that, this is I'm looking at this video clip, which is limited information, and giving you my assessment on that.
Angad, you know, the fact that, and I was speaking about this in the previous half hour of this conversation as well, some of the major accidents that we've had, air accidents here in India, usually involve planes going off the runway, skidding off the runway. The Kozhikode instance, the Mangalore instance, it was a tabletop runway. The plane literally fell off that tabletop runway. But this is the first instance I can think of where at the time of takeoff, and that too within a short span, within a minute of takeoff, you know, there's a mayday call and the flight just comes crashing down. What do you think possibly went wrong?
I think it's clear that this aircraft lost thrust on both engines. Now, what specifically caused that is much more difficult to say. One point of speculation, for example, has been birds, not too dissimilar from the accident on the Hudson that we saw all those years ago. But normally when that happens, the engines will trail debris, smoke, and so on. And there's no real trail from these engines from what is admittedly a very grainy, low-resolution video. So it may not have been birds. And I think given the sort of expected actions of a pilot in such an emergency, it may well be that this engine emergency took place after decision speed, after what they call V1. Where the aircraft and the aircrew are committed to taking off regardless of what goes wrong. And it may have been anything from a mechanical fault to bird ingestion.
But couldn't he have aborted the takeoff if he did? Because, I mean, within a minute of takeoff, or within 30 seconds of takeoff, the SOS call, the mayday call was made and the flight crashes. So what happened in those 30 seconds that he couldn't abort the takeoff?
As a general rule, once you cross decision speed, it's called decision speed because that is the point at which you decide whether you're committed to taking off or not. Once you're faster than that speed, you don't change your decision. And in this case, if they decided to take off, there was no chance that they were going to do anything differently. And frankly, at those speeds, if it had speed to rotate and get airborne, even if they had tried to set down again on the runway, what was left of the runway, I suspect, and again to echo Captain Thomas's remark, again this is pure speculation, but losing both engines at this phase of flight, it ends badly almost no matter what you do, no matter what the pilots do. It's just incredibly unfortunate.
Captain Malik is also joining us. He's a charter airline pilot. Captain Malik, from whatever you've seen of this video footage, within a minute of takeoff, in fact, within about barely 30-35 seconds after its nose up, it comes crashing down. Both our previous speakers saying that clearly both the engines lost thrust. I mean, both the engines malfunctioned. Otherwise, he could have survived, at least landed it in a slightly safer place, maybe in an open field, even if one engine was working. But the fact that both engines failed at the same time, which is a 1 in a million chance of such a thing happening, what do you think led to that?
See, I very much agree with by both fellows. They said it right that it's incident had happened because of the engine lost the power. Because we can see at the time of the takeoff, the aircraft gained the right power till it's reached, I think, 300 feet height from the runway. And suddenly it's just sink towards of the incident place, and we can see it that it's something from the tail attack also, because this plane had took something on the left, from the left also. It was not on the straight gliding, descending path. So might be we can say this is the absolutely we can say this is the loss of in both of engine lost the power and it did happen. We can assume it right now, but the rest of things it will become after the investigation what exactly had happened with the aircraft and inside the cockpit.
All right, Mr. Mirza Faizan is also an aviation expert. He apparently worked on the design and development of the Boeing 787 Dreamliner. The fact that this was an aircraft which had a stellar record, not a single known crash of the 787 Dreamliner until today, how does our understanding of what went wrong today change given these developments?
So, Zaka, yes, Boeing 787 is a stellar safety record. It's a pretty impressive bird. There's not one event which leads to an air crash. There's a series of events always which leads to a plane crash or a disaster of this scale. So there's a lot of things which we have, which is a subject of investigation. The fuel system, right? The maintenance of the fuel system. I mean, there could be a lot of reason why the engine lost power. You know, there could be a bird strike, there could be foreign object intake and on its takeoff roll. There could be fuel malfunction in the fuel system. That could also be one of the problems. So once the investigation starts, the entire maintenance log since the day one this aircraft entered into service has to be properly investigated to find out.
What do you mean by malfunctioning of the fuel system? Why would that lead to a crash? If a layman is watching this program, and I'm sure a lot of them are, why would the malfunctioning of the fuel system, what's the connection between that and the engines losing power?
All right, so in this phase of the flight, when an aircraft is needing maximum thrust, maximum power from the engine, keep in mind that the aircraft is also gulping down maximum amount of fuel. So if the fuel system, which is pumping the fuel from the fuel tanks, which is probably in the engine and its belly, to the engine, if that malfunctions, there's a very high probability that the engine may burn out. Now, since both the engine burn out at the same time, which is a very remote possibility, right? There must be some integrated cause which impacted both the engines at the same time, right? So fuel system could be one of that.
What other cause could be there?
As I said, bird strike, which happened when Captain Seri landed his plane in the Hudson in 2009. I just seen for the first time, I've seen the video of this this aircraft crashing from the time it took off on your channel.
Yeah, let's play that video again, yeah.
Yeah.
As you're speaking, yeah.
So I do not see that there is a possibility of a bird hit. Reason being, when the bird is sucked into the engine of an aircraft, the engine is deprived of right amount of oxygen, and it starts to sputter. It starts to give short blast, black smoke from its exhaust, which I cannot see in this situation. So bird hit is definitely not something I will speculate on at this point of time, right? Fuel system might look one. Sometime it might happen. Now this video is from a different angle. Sometime when the pitch is too much, the aircraft is deprived of fuel as well. But I do not see that the pitch is also very abnormal at this point of time. So the malfunction of the fuel system is one thing. I will put my
Captain Thomas was referring to this. I think in the 3 instances that you recounted where both engines malfunctioned at the same time, I think you said one of them, obviously the Sully example, was the bird hit, the famous one where he flew into the Hudson River. But the second example you cited, Captain Thomas, was of contaminated fuel system.
That's correct. That happened with British Airways, if I'm not mistaken. It was a 777 airplane. And there is a phenomenon called cold soaking that happens, and that somehow will affect the fuel system. And now again, the caveat at all times about the speculative part, Even I do not believe that this airplane has suffered a bird hit. Secondly, the engines of these airplanes are not the same as the one that Captain Sully faced during that the Hudson issue. And secondly, we've operated out of Ahmedabad several times, and the birds that come not during the migratory season but at the normal times like it is now are not sufficiently big enough to cause any major damage to a 787 engine, and let alone both of those engines. So
no, and also I would imagine it can't be just one bird. It has to be a flock of birds. And from whatever we've seen this visual, we've zoomed in and stuff. We can't see any flock of birds around the time of takeoff. Again, admittedly, this is CCTV footage. It's being recorded from somewhere inside the airport compound itself. It's a little grainy. It's not necessarily a high resolution image or high resolution video, but it doesn't seem like nowhere in this video can I see any kind of flock of birds.
And when you hit birds, there is a telltale sign from the engine if it has had this catastrophic kind of failure. And the fact that he has given a mayday call, there has been a significant failure. And there have been questions of why there was no communication after that. You must understand that this is VHF communication. Once the aircraft loses altitude, it would be difficult because it's a line of sight communication, and it would be difficult for the air traffic control to get in touch with the airplane or vice versa.
So Angad, if indeed there was some kind of fuel system issue, and this was the same flight which went from Delhi to Ahmedabad, and then the next leg of the flight was Ahmedabad-London, how come they didn't detect this, or these red flags were not raised in the previous leg of this flight?
I mean, again, with the caveat that this is entirely speculation, these issues, they don't manifest immediately. They don't manifest all of a sudden. They take time to show up. I mean, if, for example, if it's debris blocking a filter or damaging a fuel pump, it doesn't catastrophically cease right away. In fact, it could take precisely that amount of time, a Delhi to Ahmedabad flight, for the fuel system contamination to sort of take hold. And then I think one of my panelists already mentioned this. Takeoff is the regime in which the engines are sucking down the most amount of fuel, and so for that small issue in the fuel system, whether it's a filter or a pump or whatever, takeoff is actually the likeliest time that it would manifest itself. But again, I mean, at this point, it's losing the fuel system on two engines on a modern aircraft which are designed to be redundant. Is highly unusual. I have to admit, I'm not intimately familiar with the 787's fuel system, so I don't know if there are any single points of failure. But yeah, losing systems, safety critical systems in today's age of certification would be very unusual.
And also, I would imagine, while this aircraft was being turned around after it landed, after it completed the first leg, and while it was being turned around, there would have been requisite maintenance, and the engineers would have checked it. Again, this was not picked up while it was on ground in Ahmedabad before it was turned around for the London leg.
Unless a specific issue is reported, turnaround servicing, turnaround maintenance is not that intensive. I mean, it's not. You wouldn't go into the fuel system, for example, on a turnaround. Unless the air crew on the incoming flight specifically flagged an issue for maintenance, I don't think the fuel system would be looked at to that extent.
If Mr. Faizan is there, and I can go back to him, all right, we'll go back to him in a moment. Captain Malik, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, if this was not a bird hit, and again, I'm just from whatever I can see on the footage, I'm not an expert. I don't visibly see any flock of birds, when this flight is taking off. If it's a fuel system issue, again, the question that is top of mind is, how come the previous leg of this flight did not detect that? Again, how come the ground engineers who would have serviced this and maintained this to turn it around for the next leg, and it's a long leg. I mean, surely there would have been some degree of refueling there as well, because you would need much more fuel for an 8-hour, 9-hour flight to London as opposed to a 2-hour flight between Delhi and Ahmedabad. How come no one picked this issue? Because it's happened within seconds of takeoff. So the issue, whatever it may have been, did not develop in that 30 seconds while it was on the runway and taking off.
Yeah. See, I'm not agree with Mr. Faizan's what he question he raised about the fuel system, because the aircraft is not it was its first flight from the Ahmedabad. It came from Delhi to Ahmedabad. It had happened, and it somewhere is the problem with the fuel system. It may be happen in the way from Delhi to Ahmedabad. It could maybe happen in the mid-air also. And I'm telling you very clearly that the fuel system of the 787, it's a four calibration fuel supplying system inside this aircraft, which is one is not working, then other is automatically start working. So it is not, this possibility is not possible that there is a fault with the fuel system. First of all, clear. Secondly, my fellow is he's right that there is no but we could not see in the video also that it's not a migratory system also. Even it's in very low flying right now. If it is on the 1,000 feet or maybe 800 feet or 700 feet, then we can say some bird may be hit to this engine. But in the very early after the takeoff of the aircraft, suddenly aircraft lose the power. So we can say somewhere in the local weather around the runway might suddenly sudden change in the weather, and the losing of this both of engine, it might have happened in my observation.
Mr. Faizan, I'll give you the last word, a minute. Again, the hypothesis that you put forth, again, all of us are speculating here, right. But the idea that it would have been some kind of fuel contamination, a fuel system contamination, how come it didn't get picked up in the previous leg of the flight from Delhi to Ahmedabad?
So it does not work like that. If there is an issue in a system, it could have been picked up in the previous flight, and going with that hypothesis, every plane has to crash if there's an issue in its first flight, right? It does not work like that. How it works is like every flight, every takeoff, every landing add to stress, and then that stress on the system accumulates, and it results in a chain reaction, which keeps on impacting some other systems. This leads to crash. There have been instances where maintenance done 6 years ago led to a plane crash after 6 years, right? So there are incidents like that. But I agree with all of you here that we are all speculating. We don't know what has happened. So yeah.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Like I said, our thoughts and prayers with the families of the victims who died. There's been just one miraculous survivor that we know of. All the others on board are feared dead. Thank you very much for tuning into this coverage. But on the other side, my colleague Rahul will take this forward.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
I can assure you that Indian aviation is probably one of the safest in the world. We have all the protocols in place. Our DGCA is very robust and effective, and to find, to pick holes into our ability to manage Indian aviation would be very unfair. And I always say this, and I repeat, that aviation is either 100% or zero. There's nothing like 99.9% in aviation. And therefore, in this case also, look at the aircraft. It arrived from Ahmedabad from Delhi. Obviously, it flew without any issue. And to take a 9.5-hour journey from Ahmedabad to London, obviously the pilots would have done all the pre-flight checks. And no pilot is foolish enough to take off if he is not satisfied. The captain per se in this aircraft would have also had thousands and thousands of hours of command. And a 787 and today's aircraft per se are very robust, fail-safe. They have many backup systems. And to really think what went wrong, I would be hazarding a guess, which would not be fair. the point here is the aircraft did go on a takeoff roll, and between the time the wheels went up and the time it crashed, probably the time frame would have been almost only about 60 seconds or so, because you can't go to 800 feet and crash and it be within less. I mean, the time span is only 60 seconds. Now he's already given a mayday call. Now I don't know what exactly went wrong. It will be again hazarding a guess, which would be unfair. The only thing which can be ascertained is now, since the aircraft has fallen just a few hundred meters from the airport and in the BJ Medical Complex, therefore, to retrieve the black box and the other equipment would be also, quite simple. We would be able to ascertain only after that. Let me tell you one more thing. In today's aircraft, they are very sophisticated. All the parameters of an aircraft, right? Every single second the aircraft is in the air, all the parameters are recorded, not only by the aircraft, but they are also transmitted to a central command, real time, of the airline itself. So if there is, when an aircraft does a flight, there is a way to ascertain every single parameter during whatever the duration of the flight. So if anything would have gone wrong prior to this flight, or which may have escaped the attention of anybody, I'm sure this will be retrieved in no time once the equipment is found.
Now, Mr. Patel, just to go back in time, because this fleet, the Dreamliner, very, very safe. I think from what the experts are saying, and I only have them to sort of lean on for facts, they've said that this is the first time a Dreamliner has actually crashed anywhere in the world. Now, most of these Dreamliners were purchased, I suppose, about 10, 12, 15 years back by Air India when it was still government owned. Obviously, there would have been a huge procedure that must have unfurled within government to select the plane. There would have been due diligence. There would have been all sorts of studies that would have been conducted.
Well, most certainly. I mean, first, the procedure itself in government is a very robust procedure. Goes through several layers. And ultimately, the basic selection of aircraft is done only on technical parameters. Because, the airline, requires a certain type of aircraft for certain, lengths of the flights. You want to go to the US, you want to go to the European countries, or to, 8-hour flights, 12-hour flights, and so on. And the kind of configuration you want. Let me also tell you that the Dreamliner, at the time it was ordered, was one of the most sophisticated, advanced fly-by-wire aircraft which was going to be produced. And it was ordered by...
Viewers, the footage makes the heart sink. In 30 seconds, it was all over. You can see those pictures, all over for 242 passengers on AI171, barring one miracle survivor, as the plane crashed into a medical college located in its flight path just beyond the perimeter of the Ahmedabad airport, viewers. One of the biggest tragedies in the country. The plane lost lift catastrophically. Its landing gear hadn't even been retracted, and you can see that, viewers. It was laden with fuel as it was preparing for a long haul to London Gatwick. It was a firebomb, virtually, waiting to go off. It was just a 13-year-old aircraft, so ordinarily it shouldn't have suffered the catastrophic failures it has. The only silver lining, as I told you, was the news of a survivor emerging from the wreckage. Literally a walking miracle. There you can see him. The survivor was a man, or is a man called Vishwas Kumar Ramesh, a British national who was returning to London. He was seated on 11A. He recounted that he was surrounded by fire and smoke and can't believe he is alive. Judging by the ball of flames, even we can't believe that someone survived this inferno. You can see those pictures. I want to go back to those pictures. There are two visuals of that crash. One, of course, is this entire sequence from takeoff to crash, which makes the heart sink and the stomach churn. And there is another one, caught from a distance, from a different angle. There it is, viewers. Mid-flight, and the plane comes down. Now, Vishwanath Ramesh, as I told you, is lucky to be alive. He's lucky to be alive. And viewers, I have to say that if it's a silver lining, news of a survivor emerging from the wreckage, then I have to say, viewers, that the others shouldn't actually have died. Let me tell you, this tragedy could have been averted. Red flags have been raised, not once but repeatedly. And in my hand, viewers, are the instances. The DGCA that comes under the central government has flagged numerous issues with Air India through show cause notices, but never got adequately satisfactory responses. That is what the DGCA has said on numerous occasions. If this is the case, why did the DGCA give such a long rope to Air India? These are questions the DGCA must answer. The Tata Group, the DGCA needs to come out and explain. At one point, for example, the DGCA said and flagged, quote, instances of unauthorized entry into the aircraft cockpit have been reported to the DGCA in the recent past, wherein persons having no authority or purpose were permitted entry into cockpit, unquote. This is a serious breach. But more than this, there were show cause notices for risky flight safety. Viewers, there are many instances. And these instances begin from June 2022, when Tata took over Air India. Now, viewers, the Tata Group came with a halo. It emphasized the fact that Tata was the one that was taking over Air India. Why? Because there's a certain brand resonance. There's a certain trust factor associated with the Tata brand. Viewers, did the Tatas squander that trust? Did they barter it for profitability? I don't know. I can only tell you the instances when it appears that it has been quite lax on the issue of safety. On January 2025, it was fined 30 lakhs for allowing a pilot to fly without completing mandatory takeoffs and landings. How could you do that, viewers? The Tata brand stands for something. How could they cut a corner such as this? The DGCA once said, quote, instances of unauthorized entry into aircraft cockpit have been reported to DGCA in the recent past, wherein persons having no authority or purpose were permitted entry into the cockpit. Air India pilots raise alarms over extended duty hours, with unions, ICPA and IPG alleging safety compromises and regulatory violations. All of this has happened. They seek immediate action to halt the coercion for extended flight duty time limitations, FTTL that is, and uphold aviation safety standards. The point is that to make Air India profitable, we're being told corners were being cut regularly. Maintenance crews were cut back. I'm not saying that these issues are directly linked to what happened tonight or earlier today, but I'm saying that there were problems in the manner in which Air India has been running its business, potentially taking its duties casually. And that's the problem. Trust is of utmost importance in this business. Did the Tata Group barter that for profitability? That's a question I'm going to be repeatedly asking. And, viewers, if this was the track record, if the DGCA itself was not satisfied as it maintains on its own, and let me read out something to you, viewers, from another part of this report that I have. It said, in May 2024, The DGCA issued a show cause notice after 2 long-haul flights left passengers in stifling cabins without proper air conditioning. The notice stated the airline was time and again failing to take due care of its passengers, unquote. It is just a mentality. And the DGCA, if it found that the airline was so constantly in breach of its own standards, why didn't it do something about it? There's also something else. A whistleblower had urged the maker of the Air India Dreamliner plane, Boeing, to ground the fleet. Boeing engineer Sardar urged maker to ground every 787 Dreamliner, flagging risk of premature failure. Sardar claimed manufacturing giant took shortcuts to reduce production bottlenecks while making the 787. He also came out with a complaint that read, gaps in separately manufactured fuselage sections faulty, reduces durability, raises the risk of a catastrophic failure. I'm not saying that happened earlier today, but between 21 and 2023, the Federal Aviation Administration of America and Boeing paused deliveries of the new Dreamliners to investigate the issue. Boeing later stated it had updated its manufacturing process and deliveries eventually resumed. Did Air India do its due diligence with Boeing? How did it satisfy itself that Boeing has taken care of the problem? What was the nature of this due diligence? Because in just this year, there have been 6 incidents involving the 787. This is the 6th aircraft incident in 2025 involving a Boeing 787 Dreamliner. Washington-bound Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner made an emergency landing in Lagos after declaring a mid-air emergency. September 2024, an Air India Boeing 787-800 passenger plane en route from Delhi to Birmingham made a precautionary landing in Moscow due to technical issues. There was another problem between an Air India plane, Dreamliner, Delhi to SF, made a precautionary landing in Siberia. Why? Because the crew detected a potential issue in the cargo hold. May 2024, Boeing warned airlines flying its 787 Dreamliner model to inspect certain switches in the cockpit after a New Zealand-bound LATAM plane dropped violently mid-flight, injuring several passengers. You might even remember that incident. There's also the Turkish angle, viewers. Air India had signed an agreement with Turkish Technic for the maintenance of its wide-body aircraft. After Operation Sindoor, this was reviewed, or the contract is under review. I don't know the exact status. I'm not saying at all, viewers, that it did this so deliberately. But viewers, there are a lot of questions that need to be answered, specifically aimed at arriving at a conclusion. Could this have been prevented? With greater care from both the DGCA and Tata. Today, the Tata Group has expressed regret. But is it nearly enough, viewers? Noel Tata, chairman of Tata Trust, said he's deeply saddened by the tragic accident involving Air India Flight 171. Heart-wrenching incident has brought immense grief to countless families. Our thoughts are with all those who have lost their loved ones, and our heartfelt condolences to the bereaved families, and stand in solidarity with them during this unimaginable time, unquote. What won't go unnoticed is that the crash has taken place within days of Boeing settling a case with US Department of Justice. 2 major crashes that were due to faults on Boeing new 737 MAX model. Nothing to do with this aircraft, viewers. In Indonesia and Ethiopia in 2018 and 2019, those are the 2 cases. Last month, Boeing paid off $1.1 billion in a deal with the US Department of Justice to avoid prosecution over the 2 crashes. Lawyers for some of the victim families called the payoff deal morally repugnant. Now, viewers, some questions need to be asked. We can't simply put this down to misfortune. We can't simply put this down to an awful constellation of consequences. No, viewers. We still don't have the report, but far too many lives have been lost on the ground and in the aircraft. And I want to open this up. We have with us M.R. Sivaraman, former DGCA, KVG Rao, former cabin crew, Air India Captain Amit Singh, founder of Safety Matters Foundation, Devesh Agarwal, aviation expert, Parvez Damania. All of these people are very well known. Suhail Seth will also be there with us in just a few moments. But I want to first begin asking some very straightforward questions. And I want to begin with former DGCA KVG Rao, former cabin crew Air India also. Now, Captain Amit Singh, are you there with us? Okay, why is he not there? Let's get him on because it's important. Mr. Sivaraman, former DGCA, what do you make of the incident today? What do you make of it?
It is very difficult to come to any conclusion right now or even make a guess. Normally, when an aircraft is cleared for takeoff, it is cleared with respect to all its parameters, without which no pilot of the experience of this gentleman who took command of the aircraft would have accepted to fly the aircraft. And moreover, this aircraft has been flying for the past 11 to 12 years. And all its defects, deficiencies, everything might have been noted, and they would be on record for the DGCA to investigate them properly. Of course, now it's too late to take any remedial action in respect to the aircraft, but of course, it would be visible in regard to the action taken if there had been any deficiency reported by the pilot. In this particular case, the aircraft took off properly. That means the aircraft had developed full thrust on both its engines. But as it reached a height of 600 feet above the airport level, suddenly it had lost lift and the aircraft simply fell. One can see it very clearly that it was floating and it just fell. That means it lost all its lift, which could happen only on, as far as I know, only in two cases. One, both the engines have failed, or the entire lift mechanism of the aircraft, the stabilizer, the ailerons, everything failed. Now that cannot happen unless there has been a catastrophic negligence in regard
catastrophical, you say, catastrophical negligence, but it could have been a catastrophic failure, and this has been flagged by a former Boeing engineer, Mr. Salepur. You know this case. We all know this case. It was flagged last year.
Yeah, I know.
He warned. He said, ground these flights, ground these planes. Yet we were told by Boeing that everything has been sorted out. So I'm sorry, sir, but there is somebody who needs to put their hands up and tell us on what basis did they believe that Boeing had rectified the issue. We don't know. Maybe this is exactly the foreboding this gentleman had.
That's correct.
Yes. Lives have been lost.
What I'm trying to
we owe them an explanation.
That the Boeing aircraft is such a giant corporation having influence all over the world, including the governments to which they supply aircraft or to the countries which they supply aircraft, and they get away with paying fines. In fact, they should have been prosecuted, and they were not prosecuted. The Boeing chief was not prosecuted. They got away with fines.
Yeah, they paid blood money to the Department of Justice, the US Department of Justice. They paid $1.1 billion. They paid blood money. I mean, hundreds of people died in those crashes in 2018 and 2019 when a 737 MAX model in Indonesia and Ethiopia crashed, just because they were lives that perhaps in the rarefied environs were not European lives or US lives or whatever it is. It didn't matter. You could just pay money, insulate yourself from the blowback, from the law.
Get away with it.
Shocking.
See, in my time when I was DGCA, one Boeing 747 aircraft lost one engine, a whole engine fell near Palam airport, and the aircraft crash landed, and it was burning when I reached the aircraft at that particular point of time. When we reported this matter, we found, due to our investigations, we found the bolt which held the engines, they were very weak. Ultimately, the Boeing rectified it and they got away with it. These are giant companies. What can we do? At the most, we can say, okay, we will not buy any more Boeing aircraft. That is one decision the country can take. The government can take, the airlines can take. Secondly, the point that you have mentioned in your introduction, that several notices were given to the Tata Airlines, and they are not compliant with the DGCA's instructions. That's a very sorry state of affairs. I am afraid if I had been DGCA, I would have given them notice so that I would withdraw their license to fly. That should have been the step taken by the DGCA. If so many of their notices had not been complied with the company,
there's a problem here. Parvez Damania, there is a problem here. You know, you've been part of the airline industry for a very long time. I am shocked, Parvez Damania, You've been
I am
you've been
absolutely
executive
shocked.
director of Kingfisher Airlines. I'm shocked that the DGCA has complained on numerous occasions, fined Air India. I'm talking about a culture here of laxity.
DGCA is a very firm body. They're very strict. I know Shivaraman sir very well. And they would take action against any airline that would not fall in line. I am surprised that they've given so much leverage to Air India and Tata, which is quite surprising to me. And this is a very hard lesson, a very bitter pill to swallow. These people have died, so many lives have been lost, and no amount of money can compensate the situation. As far as Boeing, you are talking, now the problem for the world is there are only two manufacturers left, Boeing and Airbus. So you have to choose between the two. Today, any airline in the world cannot ignore Boeing completely. There has to be some amount of competition, there's some amount of strategy. So airlines are forced to buy Boeing or Airbus. So a lot of people end up buying Boeing, and that is the reality of the situation there is. Now, I heard what you said, but I am very shocked to understand that the Tata Group, with such high moral standards, are behaving in this manner. This cannot be excused, and this is a very, very, very expensive wake-up call.
So in the interest of balance, let's not jump to conclusions. Let me pull myself back, viewers, because it's easy today to go on a witch hunt without the facts, without the absolute facts. We only have conjectures. We only have past precedent. Has that resulted in the incident that we are seeing today? One survivor miraculously has escaped this absolute ball of fire.
I'm switching over to the other line.
Okay, just 1 second. Stay on with me. I just want to bring in Mr. Devesh Agarwal. He's an aviation expert also. Mr. Agarwal, look, what could have resulted in what we just remove these pictures of Mr. Shah and put this thing of the pictures of the plane. Yes, let's have a look at that. That's important, viewers. This is very, very important. What we're seeing is a takeoff, and within 30 seconds or so, the plane is down. Mr. Agarwal, what do you make of this? What could have happened? What could have happened to this plane? I think you're on mute, sir. Yeah, please unmute yourself. Thank you. Yes. Yeah. I can't still hear you. You're on mute. I don't know what happened between the afternoon and today, because we were hearing you very clearly and you made so much sense. He's still on mute. I don't know. Okay, let's try to come back to you, but let me bring in Wing Commander Sudhakaran. Wing Commander Sudhakaran, you've been a pilot. What do you make of this? What do you think has happened? Some people are saying that the flaps of the airliner weren't opened to a particular degree, etc., etc. Everyone's become an expert. What do you think is happening?
To begin with, I'm not a pilot.
My mistake, sir.
I'm a nautical engineer. So I'm qualified on avionics, not a pilot. But having said that, having served in the Air Force and having been around the aircrafts and seen enough accidents, see, any accident, the primary cause is generally assessed through what is called as the Swiss cheese model. And that has been brought out by many experts. It's not one reason which leads to an aircraft accident. It never happens. It is a layer of cheese which gets aligned, and all these holes, when it gets aligned, that's when that perfect accident happens. And unfortunately, today was one of the day, and my heart goes out to people who lost their lives. I stand with the families today. But you know, if you try and assess, there is one thing that is very clear here. There is something that is catastrophically failed.
Okay, something catastrophically wrong. Okay, let me bring in now Devesh Agarwal, if I can hear him. Devesh Agarwal, what do you make of this?
Okay, Rahul, if you see the video with the audio on, you can hear engine sounds. So, you know, the thoughts of people saying that there's a sudden loss of power. Actually, there seems to be a sudden loss of lift. Now, that could happen for a variety of reasons, including an engine failing. But the thing is, these GE engines, the Gen X engines, are from a family of GE engines that are over 30 years old, and they have got a solid reputation. In fact, you were mentioning the flight which was from Delhi to San Francisco, which had to divert to Russia. It was a 777, and all 777s are powered by GE 90 engines. And these are the engines that have proven so reliable that earlier, when aircraft used to fly, they had to be within 60 minutes of an airport for diversion. Today, that time frame has shifted to 6 hours, which permits these flights of Air India over deep parts of Russia where there is no airport nearby, purely based on the reliability of that engine. Now, and just a small piece of information, any aircraft has to certify, it has to prove that it can take off at its maximum takeoff weight, full of fuel, full of equivalent of passengers, the maximum specified takeoff weight of the aircraft as specified by the manufacturer. It has to prove that it can take off with one engine failed. If you go to YouTube and just see, Airbus has to do it, Boeing has to do it, Embraer has to do it, Comac has to do it. We talk about Russia, MC-21. There are now 5 different manufacturers. All of them have to prove that their aircraft can fly with one engine, or rather take off with full weight with one engine. So here, it exactly as one of our panelists from the Air Force saying, it's a Swiss cheese model. No accident is a result of a single cause. It is always a series of slices of cheese where the holes line up, and mistake after mistake after mistake. Now, that mistake could be human, it could be weather, it could be technical, it could be mechanical. This particular
clearly,
aircraft,
what do you mean weather? Because it's a clear day, visibility is great.
Well,
there are no surface winds.
No, that's the thing. You could have. I don't see that as much of a possibility, but you can see the aircraft is taking off at an angle. What is the crosswind element there? Was there a microburst, which is called wind shear? These are things that will come out, and which is why I urge people, please let us not speculate. Let us wait for some kind of preliminary report. I'm very, very sure that the accident investigators from India's AAIB, because they will be assisted by the US NTSB, by Boeing, by GE, by Air India, by AAI. There will be a big investigation team, and it will come out. So we just have to hold on for a little while, and let's avoid speculation, because honestly, I feel we do disservice.
No, but we're also looking at a pathology here. We have to look at the pathology. Look, yes, of course we have to wait. No one is foolish enough to think that the pilot would want to fly an aircraft that is compromised in any which way. No one is suggesting for a moment that Tata willingly has put passengers in jeopardy by flying this aircraft because it knew something but decided not to act upon it. I'm not getting there. I'm not talking about that kind of culpability, but I'm talking about a laxity, a lax approach towards passenger and air travel, passenger safety and air travel, and there has been enough of a history. And the DGCA, look, I don't know about the DGCA, but the little experience I've had covering news for a while now, I have noticed that the DGCA, some people here say they take a lot of action, etc., but I've also seen when certain things have been permitted, which should not have been permitted. We've seen this in the past.
Rahul, if I may, Air India, at least the aircraft may not have been maintained internally, kept clean, things were breaking, things like that. I can understand that. But Air India engineering, they have a very strong reputation.
Okay, look, I mean,
let me just 5 seconds, 5 seconds. They have a reputation of sending out airworthy aircraft. You see, Air India flights are not this thing. You talk about diversions and all. Hey, that happens so regularly.
Okay. Let me bring in KVG Rao. He's been a part of Air India before. Mr. Rao, tell me, Air India is above blame because their brand, their values are unimpeachable. That's the sense I'm getting on this panel. Would you agree with that?
Firstly, Rahul, my heart goes out to the people whose lives are lost. Having said that, Air India always had a very bad track record of flight safety. I have been flagging the flight safety violations since the year 2008. And there are innumerable, I can tell you around lakhs of flights have flown illegally and contrary to rules. I'm not getting into that now. Air India got privatized under the Tatas. After the Tatas, also the culture didn't change in Air India. Profit took over the thing. I'll give you a simple example, Rahul. This is a DGCA report in July 2023. They conducted a surprise raid on the Air India and they found that the checklists were physically signed by an auditor from CMS department, which does not fall under the approval and inspection scope of DGCA. But till today, nothing has happened to that officer. She has got promotions. She has risen from GM to director and finds her way always into the flight safety department. The DGCA has been the most lackadaisical organization that I have seen from 2008. I have filed numerous writ petitions in the Bombay High Court and the Delhi High Court. Unfortunately, the courts, there are delay in the courts, it's happening. I have documented at least 1 lakh violations from 2018 to 2014. Now we come to know that in 2017, when we filed a writ petition before the Delhi High Court, that DGCA did not have the powers to make those rules also. So DGCA was actually fudging reports. And our worst sector was the India-Australia operations. Flights were operated despite a report given saying that if you operate in the manner that you are operating, the flight safety risk is 25 times the permissible limit. And it is their own report. It is not my report. But the DGCA has been sleeping over it.
Why? Why do you think?
There is a quid pro quo. If you want me to be very honest with you, it's a quid pro quo. It's as simple as that. I have not won. Here I have DGCA saying that medical reports are forged.
Can you go through some of these documents, sir? Tell us a little bit about this. I'm completely shocked right now.
Provision of QR code on the test reports for medical examination. It is noticed by the medical DTO, DGCA, DSCA headquarters that of the reports submitted by license holders to undergo medical examination are being amended, not amended, EMEN. That means they have been forged to normal values and submitted. What action has been taken against those people? Nothing. The flight safety director gets away with blue murder. Here, this is another thing. DGCA report. Wrong crew on a flight. And they flew halfway to realize that the person on the left hand side was not competent to be on that aircraft in the first place.
Oh my God.
No action. No action taken.
And which airline is this? Which airline is
Air
this?
India. I am only talking about Air India.
When, sir? When? What period? What time period?
23rd August 2024.
So this is after Tata's took over?
Yes, 23rd December 2023. Okay. July 2023. Rahul, I will not make a statement without having documents. I have approached the civil aviation minister n number of times. His ears have been filled by people who have committed these frauds.
Which civil aviation minister? You talking about Mr. Naidu, the Union Civil
The
Aviation
present
Minister?
one also, I just sent a mail to him, and the earlier ones also. In fact, for violations, I have also obtained court orders to file FIRs. They have taken it to the High Court, fraudulently obtained interim reliefs. We are fighting it. I have been fighting this battle, Rahul, since 2008 on the flight safety violations. After the arrival of the 787s, all the rules were tweaked. Each and every rule on the India-Australia operations where Air India started their 787 flights were tweaked. Contrary to what Mr. Naseem Zaidi, who was then the DGCA, was very particular. That no, this is how you will operate these long-range flights which are over 14 hours of flight time. It is their own DGCA officers who have violated those rules. We have brought it to their notice, but nothing happens. Because like I said, there is political compulsions, there is maybe gratuities involved. And I make this statement with full responsibility, Rahul. I have seen it day in and day out. I have been a victim of exposing these corruptions.
So
I've been a
tell me
victim
something,
of-
sir. You said that you've approached the courts. You're not
Yes.
getting a hearing from the executive or from the DGCA or from the airlines, what have you, but you approached the courts. And what is the
Yes.
court done? The
Sir,
court
I find
in this country
two
that is
petitions-
constantly, viewers, unveiling itself in activism. Now let's listen to what the courts have done in this country. Mr. Rao, tell us.
I filed 2 writ petitions in the year 2013 and 2014. Till 2019, neither did Air India nor did DGCA file a reply to those writ petitions. And 2019, the present Chief Justice of India, Justice Gawai, had to pass an order saying it is unfortunate that for 5 years you have not filed a reply on the violations that took place from 2013 to 2019.
My God.
I have filed criminal cases on these people because they have endangered lives. The court, and I'm sorry, the courts also have let me down badly. So
Well, we're not surprised. I'm sorry, I'm not surprised.
I'm telling you, Rahul, these are all criminal cases filed by me in the criminal courts. I have at least 63 criminal
So are you
cases
saying,
pending.
so Mr. Rao, let's just cut to the brass tacks. Are you saying that this kind of an incident could have been averted had there been greater honest vigilance? Is that what you're saying?
No,
Let me give you an example. For example, let me give you an example. On March 2025, DGCA show causes Air India 80 lakh fine for breaching pilot flight duty time limits. It's a very sensitive issue, viewers. Then, January 2024, 2 months prior, 30 lakh fine for inadequate Cat 3 pilot rostering during fog. So the person who was flying that plane did not have the adequate training, the skill set to fly in fog. Viewers, and that
Rahul,
person would have been carrying anywhere between 150 to about 170 passengers. So you're risking knowingly
there
the
are
lives.
lakhs of lives that have been endangered till today. And I have documents to prove it, Rahul. I don't speak without documents. I am before a court on affidavit.
No, I'm talking about DGCA action on Air India. So just a fine, 30 lakhs here, 20 lakhs there, is that the price of 180
exactly.
lives?
Yeah.
I'm shocked.
What is 30 lakhs? The company is paying it.
Exactly.
It is the shareholders' money. It doesn't come from the pocket of the pilot. It doesn't burn a hole in his pocket.
I mean, there is a 30 lakh fine, sir. So DGC has taken action in January 2025. 30 lakh fine for allowing a pilot to fly without completing mandatory takeoffs and landings. I mean, this is double jeopardy.
Has he not endangered lives?
That's what I'm
If you
saying.
remember-
And the cost is 30 lakhs.
Yes.
So where is the disincentive, viewers? Why aren't these people hauled before criminal courts, etc., etc.? Why are the DGCA not moving?
I am fighting.
Criminal writ
I'm
petitions.
fighting against the wall. I mean, I stick out like a sore thumb because I'm a whistleblower. My family is being hurt. I mean, I know what I'm going through, what I'm doing.
So let me just hold on, sir. This is very. First of all, we salute you for your yeoman service. Unfortunately, viewers, look at this. One single man waging a fight against a system that is actually trying to discredit this person. And he's got all his documents, he's got all the reports, he's only highlighting what the DGCA itself has observed. I mean, how bizarre is this, viewers? That a 30 lakh fine, a 30 lakh fine, or an 80 lakh fine, or another 30 lakh fine for endangering, knowing fully well that your pilot is not up to the task. So endangering 150, 140, 130 lives. I don't know what kind of craft this was, whether this was just an Airbus 320 or whether it was a bigger craft, I don't know, the capacity. But anywhere between 130 lives upwards. And the price is 30 lakhs. Do the math, viewers. Do the math. Today, Air India has announced compensation of 1 crore for each of the passengers who lost their lives. 1 crore, viewers. I want to bring in Suhail Seth. Sir, just stay on with me because I want you to respond also to some of these responses that we're going to get. Suhail Seth, thank you very much for joining us. We have with us others on the panel who are extremely well versed in this There's Mr. Damania, who you must know. I want to begin by asking you, there's growing evidence to suggest that Air India hasn't taken its responsibilities very seriously. And therefore, can the Tatas just walk away from all of this thinking that they're blameless, Mr. Seth?
I don't think the Tatas are the kind of group that will walk away from any responsibility. Rahul, you were there when 2611 happened. Ratan Tata, R.K. Krishna Kumar at that point in time stood right outside the Taj. Mr. Tata attended every funeral. We gave help to everyone. The Tatas gave help to everyone. They offered help, both financial and emotional. I don't think the Tatas as a group is the kind that will walk away from anything. A. B. You've seen N. Chandrasekharan's statement. The statement very clearly says that we will get to the bottom of this. We will offer all the support, all the help to all the families that have been affected by this crash. Look, no one, and least of all a group as venerable as the Tatas, would want anything of this kind to happen. So, while everyone says, oh, the DGCA has flagged this, the DGCA has flagged that, then my question, Rahul, to you as an ordinary Indian citizen is, then why did the DGCA not take action? Everyone says, oh, but the DGCA wrote to the Tatas, DGCA wrote to this. Please remember that Tatas have more to lose should there be a problem, and as there has been of this magnitude reputationally, than the DGCA. A. B. This is a group that took on Air India when no one wanted to touch it, made changes. You had visible changes in both the consumer experience and the refurbed aircraft. So, someone needs to cut the Tatas some slack. It's very easy in our country to hold one person responsible and say, oh, the Tatas are at fault. The aviation business, and Rahul, I was on the global board of British Airways, on the global advisory board. I know a thing or two about how airlines are run. It's very easy to say, oh, but British Airways was at fault or Air India is at fault. The reality is the following. A, we have to wait for an inquiry. B, we have to get down with the people from Boeing, because this is a Boeing issue more than an Air India or a DGCA issue. Number 3, where did the Tatas go wrong? You had a pilot, the commander of the aircraft had more than 8,000 hours of flying. The first officer had more than 1,100 hours of flying. Do you think people would risk a non-maintained aircraft, and would they even fly it? Number 2, the pilots of Air India are rated amongst the finest by any aviation research that you can undertake in the world. So I'm saying that it is early days, it's early hours.
Okay, you're saying let the dust settle a little bit. Mr. Rao, how do you respond to this? The Air India under Tatas is very conscious of its brand image. It's not going to do things that is going to jeopardize the legacy of the Tatas. And we know that legacy is quite a shining legacy. How do you respond to that?
Let me assure Mr. Suhail Seth, I am second generation Air Indian. My father was very close to Mr. G.R.D. Tata. And they broke no violation. Let me make that also very clear. So I know exactly where the Tatas are coming from. But it is a culture that has gone down now. I'm not blaming the Tatas. We can't say Mr. Ratan Tata or G.R.D. Tata. The company is run by a bunch of corporate executives. They are only worried about their promotions, their bonuses, and other things. At no stage have I said that the Tatas are bad. Let me make that also very, very clear. I have had issues and I have taken up those issues. It is unfortunate that Tatas have brought in lawyers to kind of fight these illegalities that we are exposing.
Rahul,
that is the saddest part.
1 second. Let him finish. Okay. Go ahead.
Like I said, I have the documents.
Okay.
It's not.
So Mr. Damania wants to respond to you.
Rahul, any company will try and protect the reputation. If somebody files a case, Tatas are bound to bring in the lawyers. How are they supposed to not protect the reputation? See, I am 100% sure that Tatas would not cut any cost as far as the engineering standards are concerned. It's a cash-rich company. It's not a company that's going down or some company running tight for money.
No, I'm not implying. No, hang on. I'm not. Let's be very clear here. I'm talking about owners.
You want to ruin their reputation?
No, that's true. But we also know that this is not a charity. Right, you have to make profits. There are people who've come out from within Tata Group, within Indian Airlines. Sorry, no, 1 second. There are people who've come
desperate to make profit that they will take risks.
Okay, let's not be so
sure of that.
Okay, but then hang on. The next question.
We are jumping the gun.
No, I'm not jumping the gun. I'm only interested.
Voice recorder is found. We are just guessing.
No, that's fine. But I'm interested in. Look, this may not have anything to do with any of these pathologies that I'm referring to here. None of this backstory might have actually led to what has happened, and I respect that point of view, sir. I completely, Mr. Damania, respect that point of view. But if you are to prevent the larger rot from infecting other services on other days, we also have to, on a day such as this, look at that issue. And if there are issues, they need to be addressed. We have to minimize risk, don't we?
At every stage, safety comes first in aviation.
There we go. So I am looking at a track record that doesn't inspire much confidence. Now, I don't know if this is about making money, saving, the extra rupee here or 10 rupees there to boost profitability. I don't know. I'm not going into all of that. But what I'm seeing is a kind of laxity. It's a kind of culture that I think Mr. Rao is referred to. He's talking about the corporatization of Air India under the Tatas, and Mr. Suhail said, look, if the Tatas are so conscious about their image, why would they deploy, for example, pilots that aren't adequately trained to operate in low visibility conditions during fog? I mean, this was in 2023, December 2023, and they are fined in January 2024. Mr. Seth, can you hear me? Yeah.
It's a great point that you've raised. Now let's go step by step. Fog is an issue with two things. Number one, the airport equipment. And now you know that one runway from June 15 in Delhi is going to be shut because they're going to expand the runway from 610 to 900 meters. And they're going to install equipment which will allow for fog landings. Number two, why are you blaming only Air India or the Tatas? All airlines have suffered. There have been diversions where an Emirates flight trying to land
just a minute, Mr. Seth. I have to go straight across to Mr. Amit Shah. KVJ Rao, stay on with me. I'm just going to cut across.
आज दोपहर को एयर इंडिया की फ्लाइट संख्या AI 171 दुर्घटनाग्रस्त हुई और कई पैसेंजर इसके अंदर हताहत होने की संभावनाएं हैं। इस घटना से पूरा देश क्षुब्ध है और पूरा देश एक साथ पूर्ण संवेदनाओं के साथ ये जो दुर्भाग्यपूर्ण हादसे में पैसेंजर हताहत हुए हैं, इनके परिजनों के साथ खड़ा है। सबसे पहले मैं भारत सरकार, गुजरात सरकार, भारत सरकार के प्रधानमंत्री जी और गुजरात सरकार की ओर से भी जो लोग हताहत हुए हैं, इनके परिजनों के प्रति गहरी संवेदना व्यक्त करता हूं। 10 ही मिनटों में हादसे के भारत सरकार के पास सूचना पहुंची। तुरंत ही मैंने मुख्यमंत्री जी, यहां के गृह मंत्री, होम डिपार्टमेंट के कंट्रोल रूम, सिविल एविएशन डिपार्टमेंट, सिविल एविएशन मंत्री, सभी से संपर्क किया। प्रधानमंत्री जी का भी तुरंत ही फोन आ गया और भारत सरकार और गुजरात सरकार के सभी डिपार्टमेंट एक साथ होकर राहत और बचाव कार्य में लगे। इस विमान में कुल मिलाकर 230 यात्री देश के और विदेश के और 12 क्रू मेंबर सवार थे। इसमें से एक यात्री का बचने का अच्छा समाचार मिला है, मैं उनको मिलकर आया हूं। मृत्यु का आंकड़ा तो डीएनए परीक्षण और यात्रियों की पहचान के बाद ही अथॉरिटी अधिकृत रूप से घोषित करेगी, मगर जो यात्री बचा है उसको मैं मिलकर आया हूं। घटना के तुरंत बाद गुजरात सरकार ने बहुत त्वरा से डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट की सारी इकाइयों को अलर्ट करते हुए, चाहे हेल्थ डिपार्टमेंट हो, चाहे फायर ब्रिगेड हो, चाहे पुलिस विभाग हो, भारत सरकार की भी सीएपीएफ को संपर्क कर सभी ने एक साथ मिलकर राहत और बचाव का कार्य चालू किया। मगर 1.25 लाख लीटर ईंधन विमान के अंदर ही था और लगभग गर्मी तापमान इतना ऊंचा हो गया कि किसी को बचाने की मौका ही नहीं मिला। अब मैं घटना स्थान पर भी जाकर आया हूं। सारे यात्रियों के मृतदेह को बाहर निकालने का काम लगभग समाप्त हो चुका है। जितने यात्रियों के परिजन यहां पहुंच चुके हैं वो सबका डीएनए लेने की कार्यवाही भी 2-3 घंटों में समाप्त हो जाएगी। विदेश में जिनके परिजन हैं उनको सूचना देने की कार्यवाही समाप्त हो चुकी है और जैसे ही पहुंचते हैं उनके भी डीएनए सैंपल लिए जाएंगे और मृतदेहों की पहचान के लिए जितने मृतदेह मिले हैं इनके भी डीएनए सैंपल लेने की कार्यवाही समाप्त हो चुकी है। गुजरात में ही लगभग 1000 के आसपास डीएनए टेस्ट करने पड़ेंगे। ये सभी टेस्ट करने की क्षमता गुजरात में विकसित है, तो डीएनए टेस्टिंग के लिए कहीं गुजरात के बाहर जाने की जरूरत नहीं पड़ेगी। गुजरात की एफएसएल और नेशनल फॉरेंसिक साइंस यूनिवर्सिटी दोनों मिलकर कम से कम समय में डीएनए का परीक्षण पूरा करने के बाद परिवारजनों को अपना मृतदेह परिजन का मृतदेह सौंपने का काम करेंगे। उनके रहने की सुविधा, उनकी सांत्वना की सुविधा, जिनको मेडिकल प्रॉब्लम ट्रॉमा के कारण हुए इनकी मेडिकल की सुविधा, ये सारी व्यवस्था बहुत सुचारू रूप से हो चुकी है। अभी रिव्यू मीटिंग में सारी व्यवस्थाओं को हम सब मंत्रियों ने साथ में मिलकर देखा है। एविएशन डिपार्टमेंट ने अपनी जांच शुरू कर दी है और जांच तेजी से आगे बढ़े इसके लिए भी एविएशन मंत्री जी ने सूचनाएं दी है। मैं फिर से एक बार राहत काम में जिन जिन एजेंसियों ने त्वरा के साथ बचाव और राहत का काम किया वो सभी का धन्यवाद करना चाहता हूं और फिर से एक बार जिन्होंने अपने परिजनों को गंवाया है, हताहत हुए हैं, वो सभी को मनपूर्वक संवेदनाएं व्यक्त करता हूं। मैं एक बार जरूर कहना चाहता हूं कि ये एक्सीडेंट है, एक्सीडेंट को कोई रोक नहीं सकता, परंतु 365 दिन 24 घंटा इस तरह की घटना के लिए प्रशासन का जो अलर्टनेस है उसकी कसौटी उसी वक्त होती है जब ऐसी घटनाएं होती है। और आज गुजरात के डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट की तैयारियों का एक प्रकार से दुर्भाग्यपूर्ण तरीके से मगर कसौटी हुआ और बहुत त्वरा के साथ यहाँ पर काम किया गया, वो पूरे देश के मीडिया के सामने और परिजनों के सामने भी आया है। अंत में मैं फिर से एक बार सम्माननीय प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी की ओर से, भारत सरकार और गुजरात सरकार की ओर से सभी हताहत लोगों के परिजनों के प्रति गहरी संवेदना व्यक्त करता हूं। धन्यवाद।
Mr. Amit Shah there speaking about the tragedy and the relief and the rescue efforts that were mounted. Mr. Rao, where do we go from here? I also want to bring in Mr. Devesh Agarwal right after that, because we have a survivor, a miracle survivor, and I want to understand how that can actually happen. How can, after this fireball, someone walk away? But Mr. Rao, what's your quick assessment of the way ahead from here, Mr. Rao? Can you hear me? Yes. Where do we go from here, Mr. Rao? Do we have him? I don't think we have him. KVJ Rao, I think we've lost him there. But this is the picture, viewers. Air India miracle survivor walking away from that crash site. Mr. Agarwal, what do you make of this? How is this even possible? Even Amit Shah said that this was a miracle. I mean, a plane carrying 1.25 lakh liters of ATF goes up. Yeah. And in, I think, 11A seat, we have a survivor.
God works in mysterious ways. I guess this gentleman's time had not come, and God has saved him. That's the only one word I can use for it. But since you're talking about this, Rahul, one point I'd like to this thing. I've seen some videos that are so graphic, and I would ask all your viewers also. We are talking about, those 75 students in the hostel, yes, and the passengers, of course, who have perished. But these are first responders and volunteers who have obviously seen carnage of humanity, which I'm sure they did not want to see, and I don't think they will ever forget. And I just would hope that the government would reach out and provide these first responders the kind of counseling they will definitely need post such a horrific thing.
Mr. Rao, very quickly coming out to you, where do we go from here? What do you think are the next steps? Who needs to principally answer, face the press, come out and give some basic answers?
Rahul, it's very simple. The DGCA needs to pull up its socks. They wanted to make the DGCA an autonomous body. It didn't happen. And we know why it was not allowed to happen. The fact remains is till we clean up the whole system, sir, it is going to be a problem. And it is getting murkier by the day. Like Mr. Seth was saying, why aren't we discussing other airlines? Let me tell you, sir, as on today, every aircraft is in violation of the minimum crew limitations. DGCA themselves have written a letter to me. But the fact remains is, where all can I go and what all can one man do? If the institution doesn't want to change, how can we get in? I can only
it's
take
the system, Mr. Damania, that is on test tonight. It is the system, Mr. Rao says.
It is, first of all, we have to admit one thing for sure. The aviation industry in India is growing very, very, very fast. It is growing, the fastest growing aviation industry in the world. We've already become third largest industry. And I am 100% sure the government is trying to buckle up and shape up and increase the capacity of the Director General of Aviation. But sometimes it's not possible. Our infrastructure is not keeping pace with the growth. Now, we may say it's good, bad, but this is the reality. The growth is fantastic. It is changing the entire country, it's supporting the country.
Okay.
And when an industry grows at this speed, there are going to be problems. I'm sure the government is going to do everything possible to bring this into better shape. But I think
not if we don't ask the right questions. Not if we don't ask the right questions. We need to ask the right questions. Okay, no, hang on. Let me go back to Mr. Seth. I had to cut him off there. Mr. Seth, look, it all comes down to accountability. The Tata is very conscious, you say, of their image. But then we have seen aberrations. Mr. Rao has also pointed them out. I have the details here. What do we do in a situation like this? We don't ask questions. What do we do?
They're going to install equipment which will allow for fog landings. Number two, why are you blaming only Air India or the Tatas? All airlines have suffered. There have been diversions where an Emirates flight trying to land has had to go back because the Cat 3 equipment is not working. The problem, Rahul, is no one understands, and you more than anyone else will understand when I say what I'm about to say. Pilots have to be type rated for Cat 3 landings. And that is why, if you see pilots in countries where there is a lot of fog, whether you look at the Nordic countries, whether you look at some parts of America, they're Cat 3 trained. That Cat 3 training requires investment, which the Tatas have made. Which is why, if you go back to December 2024 and compare it to December 2023 and look at Delhi airport, you will see the number of diversions or the number of non-landings owing to fog were far less because the Tatas had put into place certain measures.
I can only ask
Now,
the questions.
here's the thing.
You know,
rightfully said
hang on.
that the
I'm running
DGC
out of time. I'm running out of time. We can only ask those questions. We can only ask those questions, viewers, that are apparent to us. Yes, we agree. There has to be an investigation. Mr. Rao is also in favor of that. Mr. Agarwal is in favor of that. Mr. Sudhakaran is in favor of that. Mr. Damania is in favor of that. Mr. Seth is in favor of that. So we want the truths to emerge. But then on the back of that, we also want accountability. We've had 2 crashes in the past, but not much has changed really. Not many people we found were made accountable, apart from the small fry. That has to change. Till that doesn't change, viewers, there is not going to be a change in culture, and that's the real problem. We can talk about infrastructure, we can talk about this, that, the other, but if the culture improves, ways will be found. I leave it to this.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
I can assure you that Indian aviation is probably one of the safest in the world. We have all the protocols in place. Our DGCA is very robust and effective. And to find, to pick holes into our ability to manage Indian aviation would be very unfair. And I always say this, and I repeat, that aviation is either 100% or zero. There's nothing like 99.9% in aviation. And therefore, in this case also, look at the aircraft. It arrived from Ahmedabad from Delhi. Obviously, it flew without any issue. And to take a 9.5-hour journey from Ahmedabad to London, obviously the pilots would have done all the pre-flight checks. And no pilot is foolish enough to take off if he is not satisfied. The captain per se in this aircraft would have also had thousands and thousands of hours of command. And a 787 and today's aircraft per se are very robust, fail-safe. They have many backup systems, and to really think what went wrong, I would be hazarding a guess, which would not be fair. But the point here is the aircraft did go on a takeoff roll, and between the time the wheels went up and the time it crashed, probably the time frame would have been almost only about 60 seconds or so, because you can't go to 800 feet and crash. And it will be within the time span is only 60 seconds. Now, he's already given a mayday call. Now, I don't know what exactly went wrong. It will be, again, hazarding a guess, which would be unfair. The only thing which can be ascertained is now, since the aircraft has fallen just a few 100 meters from the airport and in the BJ Medical Complex, therefore, to retrieve the black box and the other equipment would be also, quite simple. We would be able to ascertain only after that. Let me tell you one more thing. In today's aircraft, they are very sophisticated. All the, parameters of an aircraft, right, every single second the aircraft is in the air, all the parameters are recorded, not only by the aircraft, but they are also transmitted to a central command, real time, of the airline itself. So if there is, when an aircraft does a flight, there is a way to ascertain every single parameter during whatever the duration of the flight. So if anything would have gone wrong, prior to this flight, or which may have escaped the attention of anybody, I'm sure this will be retrieved in no time once the the equipment is found.
Now, Mr. Patel, just to go back in time, because this fleet, the Dreamliner, very, very safe. I think from what the experts are saying, and I only have them to sort of lean on for facts, they've said that this is the first time a Dreamliner has actually crashed anywhere in the world. Now, most of these Dreamliners were purchased, I suppose, about 10, 12, 15 years back by Air India when it was still government owned. Obviously, there would have been a huge procedure that must have unfurled within government to select the plane. There would have been due diligence. There would have been all sorts of studies that would have been conducted.
Well, most certainly. I mean, first, the procedure itself in government is a very robust procedure. Goes through several layers. And ultimately, the basic selection of aircraft is done only on technical parameters. Because, the airline, requires a certain type of aircraft for certain, lengths of the flights. You want to go to the US, you want to go to the European countries, or to, 8-hour flights, 12-hour flights, and so on. And the kind of configuration you want. Let me also tell you that the Dreamliner, at the time it was ordered, was one of the most sophisticated, advanced fly-by-wire aircraft which was going to be produced. And it was ordered by probably most major airlines in the world, Air India also being one of the early ones. And to now even discuss it would be unfair, because after this particular aircraft itself, which has crashed, had been flying for almost 11 years. And if you see any major airline in the world, and if you go at any moment of time, there would be more than 1,000 787s up and flying.
Hello, Namaskar. This is First Post and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. We come to you tonight with news of another tragedy, a plane crash in Ahmedabad. An Air India passenger plane that took off for London and crashed within minutes. More than 200 people reported dead. Our thoughts and prayers are with the families of the victims. The pictures are shocking and heartbreaking. How did the plane crash right after takeoff? Was it engine failure? Was it human error? It's too early to say. Among the dead is the former Chief Minister of Gujarat. And so far, there is news of just one survivor. It's no less than a miracle. We will tell you how it unfolded, what the investigators are looking for, what does this crash mean for Air India, and why Boeing stocks have crashed. Leaders from across the world have sent condolences and messages of support to India. We'll also be tracking the riots in the United States, why the UK Prime Minister has refused to meet Bangladesh's Mohammed Yunus, how Canada has busted Khalistani narco-terror plot, why the US is pulling out its people from West Asia is a bigger war with Iran brewing there, and why Vietnam is merging cities and firing employees. First, the headlines. The dollar dives after US President Donald Trump's new trade threat. It lost 1% against the euro, falling to its lowest point in more than 3 years. Trump has said he will unveil unilateral tariffs within weeks. In April, he had imposed a blanket 10% tariff on most trading partners, but had put that decision on hold soon after. Colombia's president accuses the US of plotting a coup. He echoed remarks made by Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro, who has accused the US Secretary of State of leading a coup attempt against Petro. Since 2022, President Petro has been in office. Colombia is currently facing its biggest security crisis in a decade. A US and Israeli-backed charity accuses Hamas of killing 8 of its aid workers. The group said a bus carrying its staff was attacked near Khan Yunis. Hamas claims the charity is used by Israeli forces to lure Gazans into death traps. Israel accuses Hamas of weaponizing suffering in Gaza. Indonesia's president will meet his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin next week. This will be President Prabowo Subianto's first visit to Russia since taking office. Jakarta has refused to take sides in the Ukraine war and it looks to boost ties with Moscow. Indonesia is Southeast Asia's biggest economy. And South Africa races against time to find survivors of its deadly floods, which ravaged a coastal province earlier this week. More than 50 people have lost their lives. Torrential rains triggered heavy flooding and landslides. President Cyril Ramaphosa will visit the disaster-hit region tomorrow. It's a terrible